chance to put up a booth with regard to conservation as well as stormwater. It was very well received. In fact, Matt, we cleaned out about half our literature with regard to trees and firewood and things like that, but it was a great little great little gathering, and a lot of kids at the stormwater demonstration, squirting away, and Phyllis had the time of her life. So it went really, really well. And also we collected 4 volunteers. 4 more people decided to volunteer and help the town. So that was a really good
Super,
day.
the talent bank, great.
Yeah, yeah.
It's good to hear. Any other public comment from commissioners?
Nope.
Any public comment from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll start with tonight's agenda. We are going to have a presentation by Gary Goldrip of New England Forestry Consultants. He has developed a management plan and cutting for the Robb's Hill Conservation Area. If you would like to, I do have the podium set up, or you can sit at the, yep. Grab that. And I do see somebody had brought a prop, Gary, also, if they don't mind us using it, of the cutting map as well. You can make any presentations. All right.
Good evening. My name is Gary Goldrip, New England Forest Consultants, hired consultant for the town of Lunenburg, working on your woodlands in Lunenburg, Mass. We are conducting
a little closer,
the
just make sure
second. Okay. Let me see. If I can just stand up. Okay. Is this better?
Yeah, the mic, the speaker's on. So.
Try again.
Hello, hello.
Testing. Anything?
There we go.
Okay. All right. And we're in our second project, doing a timber harvest at the Robb's Hill property. All of the properties that we've been working on have forest management plans that were approved by the Lunenburg Conservation Commission and through the State Forest Stewardship Program. Trees have been marked. Timber is ready to be put out to bid. And we've had a site walk this past Saturday. Most of you I have seen already. And I'm ready to answer any questions. I think we've had a few good discussions on Saturday, but if there's anything that I can answer, I'd be glad to do that at this time.
So this is already...
Excuse me, before we start public comment, you would have to step up to the microphone, state your name and your address, and all comments go through the chair to whomever you're looking for. Okay, we just need to keep it as orderly as possible. That way there, we have a record of it, and people at home can follow along. Yep, we can start with commissioners. Any questions for Gary?
Is there, Mr. Chairman, with regard to the small town forest, should this be included as part of this conversation in the front in terms of what will continue on the small town forest?
Well, let's take it one step at a time.
Okay.
I would, where we have Gary present right now to review the plan that he has developed.
Okay.
And then we can take small town up if there's any questions about that afterwards.
Oh, okay.
So, but let's at least start with the questions that Gary can answer, where he's the one that developed the plan.
Okay.
Walked out through the woods, which I'm sure most of you have already done. Gary went through with his assistant and has walked the entire property. He has cut trees that he deemed were diseased, damaged, or were prohibiting better quality trees from growing, trying to develop more diverse biology in the area by allowing different types of trees, different age of trees, different maturities of the forest, which all have different types of plants and animals and insects and things that grow in them. So by improving the diversity of the forests in that area, it also improves the diversity of the plants, animals, insects, and everything else that we enjoy out in the woods. So if you wouldn't mind, I did have a couple quick questions, Gary,
Sure.
more to just, I know we've talked with some of the people, but we haven't talked to anybody at home yet.
Yep.
So in developing this cut, the first one we did was small town, which I believe we had targeted hemlocks primarily, and then damaged and diseased trees. What were you looking at here in Robb's Hill that was different than what we did in Small Town?
Robb's Hill is very similar. The target was anywhere between 25, 33% of the overstory, very similar to the small town forest. It is taking a percentage, a portion of the forest, thinning it, and it's not just the disease and the insect, it's like thinning carrots in your garden. You're going out, you're removing a portion to allow developing smaller trees reach maturity. You're trying to alter the forest stand structure from mature to multi-aged. A multi-aged forest, healthier in terms of diversity for habitat, wildlife, and this is forest management, and it's tree farming, and it is consistent with the timber harvest that was done at the small town forest. And I think one of my recommendations was to anyone who would like to see what active forestry is to go to the small town forest, where you have a forest that has been harvested to remove dead and dying hemlock trees, and to also diversify the forest in forest age classes and density.
Just for myself, I mean, I know you really well, but did you go to college for this, or how did you develop your forestry skills?
Yeah, I'm a graduate of Paul Smith's College in upstate New York and the University of Maine.
Okay. So the standards that you used are tried and true standards of forestry management?
Yep, forestry it's not only a science, but it's also an art. And when forester goes out to mark trees, it's based on science as well as artistic, looking at what the landowner's trying to do here on the property. Mm-hmm. Aesthetics, recreation, timber management were all part of the decisions that are made when trees are marked. Yep.
Okay. I'll open it up to other members.
Yeah, so Chairman, I was on the walk with Gary, and just for disclosure, I own land that abuts this forest, and I've been walking or doing things on it since the early 60s, so I have a lot of experience there, and it's a beautiful forest, and I'm sure most of the people here would agree it's really a wonderful piece of land. I did appreciate, and I noticed on the walk, a number of areas where you actually left some of the high-value trees, took the trees that were problems or had issues, and in some cases left high-value trees, in order to, try to minimize the impact in the forest, and I appreciated that. But I did, and there were a lot of people that had a concern that I shared when I started looking at the what do you call the paths? The skid paths. And I think what I heard, because the skid paths are pretty well identified, but I think I heard that that's not all of the skid paths, that off of some of those paths there would actually be fingers or something. Can you talk a little bit about the skid paths? Because skid paths are a big issue for everybody, including me.
Yeah, the skid trail is where the tree is going to be pulled to the landing area, the processing area. Okay. And we'll identify the main trails. And it's like a fishbone. You're going to have main trails with secondary trails that the timber harvest will have to drop trees and pull them to the main trails. So it's going to be very similar to small town forest. And you're going to have main trails and off of those secondary trails.
So that did concern me, because when I stood there, and the skid paths don't use the normal paths, which are pretty big for, they're not little trails through wood. They're, used to be cart paths, and they're pretty wide. And they don't use those, so now we're adding a whole network of skid paths, and at the end of those skid paths, they can go out. So the vision of me standing there was that it's going to be a huge impact to the forest immediately. And I know 5 years downstream, things will be better, and 10 years will be even better, and 20 years from now, my grandkids will love it the way I did. And I know you can't help but do that, but the fact that it's being done across the entire parcel that is heavily used is concerned. You know, is there any way we could restrict and not do the entire parcel, and not reduce the density of the cutting, but reduce the impact on the entire forest? So maybe half of it or something was unimpacted, and half of it we could see, and quite frankly, see what it really is like, because it's hard to picture, and I'm very familiar, I've been to the small town many times, and given that it was just cut, and that it had this hemlock issue, which created, you know, a lot of opening up.
We'll open it up to the public after the commissioner's had a chance to.
This is in relation to.
Well, this is in relation to the skid
It's a
pad.
visual representation.
Perfect, yeah.
Oh, just look it
That
over?
might be
Sure.
helpful
Yeah,
to
yeah,
Carl.
yeah.
Because we had, that was our,
Yeah.
one of our concerns
Yeah.
as well, Carl. So we actually, oh, excuse me. My name is Cindy Wilson, this is my husband, Rick Wilson. We live at 21 Longwood Drive.
So what I did is took his map and blew it up. These are the skid paths, which he said can be 18 to 20 foot wide, which is from here to the end of the stage.
18 to 24.
Which are the skid paths?
All this black is
All the
the
black.
skid paths.
This is
Okay.
the map that Matt,
Number one, we have
Yeah.
to speak into the microphone. And if we could just have one person,
Okay.
just to make it a little bit easier.
this is the map that Matt sent to us at our request because we wanted to see also what the impact of the skid trails would be as well. And so we took from the map, my husband put it into a CAD program and blew it up to scale. The scale that was on the smaller map was actually 7.4.
7.6 feet, the
So
skid paths.
he blew it up to 20. Is that correct, Rick? 20, which is a more accurate estimate. And we highlighted them just to show a visual impact of where they were going. And from this, I understand from what you just said, to access these trees, you're going to have to do fingers, is that what you call them?
In order to get to a tree,
Okay.
yes, you're going to have to make trails to harvest the tree.
So you're gonna be doing trails off these skid paths to get to these trees. These are actual trees that are marked in this particular area. I didn't have time to do a whole map. So,
If you can just use the microphone then.
oh, sorry.
It's just,
This is a new experience for me.
Yeah.
So, from here, could you tell me how you would access these trees if this is a skid path?
It's a very simple process. You're going to use a main trail.
Right, which
And then
would be this,
Off of that trail, there'll be a machine called a fellow buncher,
okay?
and that will run to each tree that is marked.
How big of a path will this machine create?
It's a function of and all of the trees that are growing together, the densities are different, and the access that they need is only based on the trees that are being cut.
How wide is the machine?
if I could,
And it's-
the member ask his questions, and then if
Okay.
his questions aren't answered, we'll allow you and the public to do it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
But thank you for that, because
You're quite
that's exactly what I'm talking, that's exactly.
That helps, that's very helpful.
That's what I'm talking about, and these, so maybe, you know, one of the things would be to address that little machine, but my question, the question sort of is, you know, given what I'm looking at here and envisioning, is there a way that we could, you know, reduce the amount of this? Because we're going in there, and I say, small-town forest, you know, I've been there, but I think there was more clearing because of the hemlocks and clusters. There was more big area clearing, I hope, because that's, you know, at least the year after the clearing, that's not going to make a lot of people, including myself, feel
Right.
better that if this ends up looking like that next year.
Right.
So,
I'm not going to try to explain what a skid trail is, other than it's a path to taking trees out of the woods to a landing. And the best thing I can offer is to take folks down to the small town forest. That is a classic example of what it's going to look like. You can split hairs here in a meeting, and it really, it's hard to define and explain what a skid trail is unless you've seen it. And that is my approach to explaining is to take you down to an experimental forest that we've already managed. In terms of your question about reducing the harvest, that's up to you. I was given, we submitted the forest management plan with the forest area to be harvested as we have marked it. And that's up to you. If you want to reduce the size of it, that's fine. You just have to remember that there becomes a point where it's no longer viable from a point where somebody's going to pay for the timber to be able to get the job done. So, and in terms of the skid trails, they're not going to be reduced. It is a trail that has to be used in order to extract trees with tops and canopies that they're pulling a whole tree. You got to understand that this is a chip harvest. In a chip harvest, the entire tree is going to be pulled to a landing in order to chip the tops. If you don't want to chip the tops, then you leave the tops, and it looks very messy. It's an aesthetic impact. So what is our recommendation? Is to have a whole tree chipping harvesting crew, just like the small town forest, where your forest fire loads are reduced, your aesthetics are improved, and the recovery of your woodland in terms of regeneration is much quicker. So the skid trails, I'm not going to try to explain it to you. You got to get out and see it. After you've seen it, then you can look at your Rob's Hill and say, okay, I understand what's going to happen. And that's your decision.
I'm sure you have managed those trails.
Excuse me, sir.
And this is tree farming. This is timber harvesting. It's not going to change. Small town forest is your classic example. And in terms of the quality work that was done there, it's a good harvest. And that's what I would hope would be done at the Rob's Hill parcel as well.
Yeah, I would say that, whether you like or not, don't like the way it looks now, was pretty close to the process, and they did do a very good job of avoiding damaging trees that weren't marked. I was amazed at how they could maneuver around and create a little path to get down there without destroying these trees. So that was good, and which is why my question isn't, how do we sort of reduce the density, but if we chose to reduce the area that we were doing it to a smaller area, and I understand it's got to at least break even. We don't want to pay money to do this, but maybe we don't need to make money either. So there may be some break-even point that we could do what's healthy for the forest, because that's what's important, what would help the health of the forest. But maybe do it in smaller chunks and break even. I'd be happy with that.
And
Okay.
you're the landowner, I'm just going to do what you direct me to do.
Yeah.
I can only make recommendations.
Thank you, Gary.
Quick question, Gary. As you've been out there and developed the plan, is it viable at half? At 30 acres as opposed to the 60? Then again, this just goes to help with our decision-making.
Yeah, 30 acres is viable.
Okay.
Yep.
Because what did we have so we have 55 acres, give or take, so it's viable, in your opinion, at half of that?
Yes.
For the management. I mean, management is the first thing we're going for. I mean, there's certainly different levels of cuts as well. As you know, I mean, you can go in and take 75 to 85%, which was done in my neighborhood along Electric Avenue. You have a tree, then you have 200 feet, then you have another tree, then you have 200 feet, and you have another tree. We're in small town, and this, we're looking at a 25% cut, so you have a tree.
25 to 35.
Then you have 20 to 30 feet, so now that tree's gonna be allowed to flourish, the understory will grow, the heads will mature, as opposed to having 5 trees in that area where you have no understory, undersized trees, which are thinner for the height, so you're more apt to get ice and snow damage, which I noticed quite a bit more down in Rob's Hill than I did in Small Town.
Yep.
I was surprised with the amount of trees down there that were damaged from the ice and snowstorms recently. So there was quite a few, and trees that had fallen down across the trail, and so, and just to Carl's point too, and I don't know when the last time you were up at Small Town, but myself, my opinion is not trails, but how they got off of the main skidder path really didn't leave an impact. I mean, you have the main skidder trail, which was purposely left hardened for a long-term trail. which people are up there now walking dogs and biking, and I'm sure this winter there'll be snowmobiling and ATVing, which they're not supposed to do. But at least myself, when I was out there, as I walked off of the main skidder trails, other than a stump or it's still more open, you really didn't see any activity or any long-term trails left off of the skidder trails.
Yeah, I agree.
So, just finished with the, okay. Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Not right now.
Any questions from other commissioners? Okay. We'll open it up to the public at this point. We're going to ask again that you walk to the microphone, name and address. One person speaks at a time. If we can't do it orderly, we won't do it. Okay? So I see this nice lady, oh, actually, you guys, yep, you can finish.
Okay, I just had a couple other questions. When I was looking at this, I thought, well, a lot of these main skidder trails just they just end. How are they going to turn around and go back the other way? I don't know anything about machinery. Do you guys need to, in addition to the skidder trail, maybe do a turnaround here and open an area to turn around and bring the trees
No,
up?
so the machine,
Or are you gonna connect them?
so the machine that cuts the trees, it's called a fellow buncher. They'll cut the tree and they lay it down with the butt end facing the landing. So all the wood is being pulled in a straight line from the point where the tree is harvested, so they don't have to turn. There will be loops in certain areas of the forest where certain topography won't allow them to go in a straight line. There's going to be eskers and areas where they're going to have to make turns,
Okay.
but none of the trees are going to be turned around.
Okay, and I remember you stating that where you do have to make those turns with these big machines and those very large trees, in some areas you're gonna have to go out even wider, correct?
Yep.
To make the turn.
You're pulling a whole tree.
So we're looking at an even larger surface area to get those trees out. Oops, that's not wide enough. Okay, so we're gonna have an interconnecting logging trail that looks, I don't know, I'm guessing.
I don't think that that's a
Well,
fair statement. If
well-
you go out to the area that we did at Small Town,
He just said they
don't.
have to loop.
Well, they just turn around and go back out the main road. They're not gonna create roads.
But to turn around, how are they gonna turn around? They're gonna have to
Turn around.
take trees out of their path to turn around, correct?
This is why,
No, I'm
It is-
just trying to visualize
yes.
this and
She has
understand.
walked.
it's very hard.
She has walked.
I'm just trying to understand that how I'm seeing it is, it's not just these skidder paths that you've provided us on the map. There will be fingers, as you call them, and turnarounds to connect back onto the main trail that you've created, correct? So the network of it connecting together is going to be much larger than what we have here.
The skid trails are just designated areas of pulling the trees. There are the buncher can cut it and walk trees to skid trails. And so when you start talking about turnarounds, I'm not going to explain it to you on a map, but I can explain it to you in the woods based on the experimental harvest that we had done. And I'm glad to do that. But in this setting, I'm not going to try to explain it on a map.
Okay. May I show you one other thing?
Yep, go ahead.
You said up to 40% of the surface area will be disturbed, the trees,
The
correct?
density.
If we go through with
Yep.
the
So,
cutting plan as
yep.
stated. I was having trouble visualizing that as well. So we took the surface area and etched out, not necessarily this all in this spot, but what 40% of the forest.
And that's
Being
very,
cut down would
very
be
incorrect.
represented.
Okay, so when I'm talking about,
You're talking about leaving little
can let
islands
us
of trees.
so that's grossly false. So the point I'm making when I say we're harvesting 25 to 40%, it's a percentage of the volume. It's a percentage of the volume of trees. And
Okay.
it's not necessarily the number of trees, okay? So in the management plan that I prepared, The volume estimate is roughly 25 to 40%, on average 33%. Volume and number of trees, they're two different variables. You're going to have big trees that have most of the volume. You're going to have smaller trees that don't have as much volume, which means you're leaving a significant number of trees per acre in the forest. You're harvesting the higher density, the higher volume in the larger trees. And this is, again, going back to thinning the carrots in your garden. You're taking out a percentage to allow the younger ones to grow to maturity. Forestry is a long-term proposition, and it is not as the word destruction came out. I don't look at it as destruction. It's a controlled disturbance. You are disturbing the forest on a short-term basis. It carries for 15 to 20 years before you come back on a rotation. And it is a disturbance. You have big equipment. You have a lot of trees coming down. You have tops breaking off. You have trees being pulled, disturbance to the soil. That is tree farming. That is timber harvesting. But it is a controlled activity that through proper supervision, this is going to come out so that over time, you're going to see the changes in the understory, more sunlight, more diversity of vegetation, young trees taking the place of those that have been harvested, altering the composition of species, size classes, which benefit wildlife, which are going to improve your timber resource over time. And yes, it's a disturbance, and it's unavoidable, but it takes time, and it's a long-term proposition. When you're looking at, I've managed many municipality properties, and people are starting to understand that when you're not actively managing your forest, it starts to decline. You're subject to insect and disease, you're subject to weather conditions, and if you're not actively managing them, now you're getting into a situation where you have monocultures, you have one class of age in your forest, and it's subject to insect disease. When those things happen, you don't have anything to replace them. And all of the major watersheds that I work for understand the Quabbin Reservoir, for example. They actively manage to protect their water resource through sustained yield, altering the ages and size classes of trees for long-term management. It's an impact initially aesthetically, no doubt. It's going to alter your recreation activity on the short term. But the long-term picture is, what are you doing to your resource? Are you a good steward to that resource that you hold? You hold a very valuable asset, and if it's properly managed, it not only generates revenue, but you increase that property's value over time. And one of the things I've always told my clients, my municipalities, is that when you have such large acreage, and in this case, I think town of Lunenburg owns about 1,800 acres. You're only harvesting 60 acres of 1,800. That's a very small portion of your town's resource. It's taking baby steps into enhancing the health and productivity of your forest. And I understand. And when you work for a municipality, everybody owns a portion of that property. And everybody has a different opinion as to how that resource ought to be managed. Well, there are going to be people who don't want to cut a tree, and I get it. But then there are going to be people who think that timber harvesting is a very good thing. So in the world of politics, you got to come together and compromise. And if it means reducing the size of your sale, great. If it means finding another area to harvest, great. But I think the important thing is that all of the resources are being managed properly for good stewardship on the long-term basis. And the best results have been being able to get together. I thought having so many people show up the other day and having as many people that are here today is a great thing. It gets you to start to educate, start to understand the process of good forestry. And then the decisions have to be made by the commission.
Thank you, Gary. I'm going to let Lisa come up now.
Well, I do have one question. What I'm mainly concerned about, well, I'm concerned about the whole thing. You keep saying harvest and tree farm. It's conservation land. It was purchased as conservation land for everyone to use. Now we're gonna go back there. There's trails everywhere. I know most of these people cross-country ski, snowshoe back there. Now we might as well just take an 18-wheeler and drive it through there.
Again, I don't think that's a proper characterization of the property. The trails will be intact. We're not damaging any of the trails other.
With all these fingers going out, they're gonna be
And
moving
again,
trails.
they're not long-term permanent trails. Okay? Over a small town, we had them do the skidder trails, long-term permanent skidder trails. If you look, the trail goes down the middle. They cleared 100 yards this way, 100 yards that way. You can't see where they drove through the woods, okay? We're not planning that type of development for this property. This property already has plenty of trails on it. So the skidder trails are not going to be left in a permanent state as they were at Small Town.
This here's a 3/4 acre clearing.
I know, but we were just talking about cross-country skiing and snowshoeing.
Right, but this is a 3/4 acre clearing they're gonna put where all the trails meet.
Yeah,
They're just gonna level it. This here is another landing area they're gonna clear flat.
okay.
Our neighbor lives right to the right of that.
We just had a new road put in, which is gonna get destroyed, and they said they're gonna put gravel on it, the road's gonna get destroyed. We just had that paved 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and we're gonna have 18-wheelers coming in and out, and an industrial wood chipper going all day long. And then all these paths cut in. And yeah, he's got the big skating trails marked, it's all these intermediate paths they're gonna go through. This area here, if you go out and look at it, which you said you have, this whole area by Burridge almost gets wiped out. The only trees he doesn't have marked are the tall standing dead ones. So it's a timber harvest for profit, not for managing the forest.
This is not the case at all.
Well, that's his
All right, I'm
opinion.
sorry. Okay, that's your opinion, but that's
Yeah.
not.
In my opinion as well.
That's 7
And
to
the
8.
land was bought for conservation land to keep it the way it is, and that's why it was bought.
To keep it healthy, not necessarily to keep it
It
in
is
the
healthy.
exact state that it's in today. Okay. Yes, your name and address, ma'am?
I am Lisa Lento. I live on 782 Flat Hill Road. I've been hiking in here for 35 years. It's beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. I'm very proud to live near here. The landscape is gorgeous. I go out there and I think the reason why it's beautiful is because it's untouched. I don't see people there, you know, maybe more people should come, but the trails are just small and only worn by feet, and I can go there and feel in touch with nature, forget about people. It's a very important resource. So I was wondering, this section, is there going to be logging in other sections or just in this section? Because this isn't the whole property.
Just the area that we walked.
Just
Two
this
parcels.
section right here.
This is one
Are there
parcel.
plans to log in the other areas?
No, the southern section where all the...
Wetlands,
yeah,
vernal
there was-
pools. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yep,
landscape.
and I believe the commission chose not to just because of those geological features, yeah.
I was doing some research and I called a couple of other towns, and I guess I don't really want to name names. I can call some more and I will. But none of them, well, two of them that I called. One of them doesn't have any forestry management plans because so many people in that town will be up in arms about the way it would look afterwards. And and this woman on the Conservation Commission told me that forestry management, the way, it's an opinion. So my opinion is, and I think a lot of other people in here have the opinion that this isn't worth it. I called another town that you had mentioned, and 8 years ago, they did
If I
one.
might, ma'am, there's just a lot of people that wanted to speak.
Okay, well, they
so if you
did
have
a very
question-
small portion, you know, they don't have plans to do others. 2 acres.
Okay.
I don't understand why we're doing every single piece of forest in our town. And I
At this
want to
point,
know how
we're
much
doing-
money you expect to make and why. And it's beautiful the way it is. I think forests can manage themselves.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
My name is Bruce Mann. I'm at 463 Burridge, right where approximately where it says street there. So I am in there literally over 300 days a year walking my dogs. You're going to devastate all the trails in this area. You can't help it because I've walked with the trees, you know, not knowing it. So he says artistic. Have all the commissioners gone all the way down to the end of Old Time? I mean, you know, the other trails. It's devastation. I'm sorry. I was trying to keep an open mind. My wife and I walked there. Gary suggested we go into Dunstable. We went to Dunstable to Pierce Town Forest. The entire thing is done. There's swaths of area that there's no trees. I mean, big areas. You can look on the map. I had a picture before and after.
If you could just keep your comments.
Right. So no, it deals with this. There, the 25 to 35 or whatever percent, it does not include what they have to take down to get to the trees. If you go to Old Town, it's just massive trails, and the fingers are devastating. There's one area that was 3 times this big. They left one tree, it was dead, there was no top. There's debris everywhere. You haven't cleaned up. You cannot hike in that area without, like, walking over stuff, moving around stuff. And, you know, you talk about, you know, fuel. That place is full of fuel now with all the dead trees. You know, it says it's supposed to be for, quote unquote, the safety and enjoyment of the residents, and you're only going to harvest 25 to 35% of the volume. You're going to harvest more than that. If you go to Old Town and you start looking,
Again, you
it's
need to keep your
empty.
comments out.
No, it's with this.
Or the other property.
And not only that, but this is, this is, I want to feel heard. You haven't
Excuse me, sir.
you haven't made, please, we want to feel heard. We want to know that you did your experiment, that you guys have really walked that. I went down there last week. It is messy, it's dirty, it hasn't been cleaned up. And you haven't finished it to show us that you can do it. We asked Gary to show us places that we'd like to see places, and this is relevant, what it looks like maybe 5 years down the road or 10 years. This will be devastated for a number of years. He can't help but make this viewable from the street. Old Town, that's way off the street, okay? People don't, I've been down there a number of times. People just don't do that. There are people and dogs and deers and everything out here every day. I've never seen that turtle either, and I've been out here for 27 years. And I see salamanders and bears and raccoons and foxes, and they're just gonna go because there's no habitat left for them. There will not be a habitat left for them for years. I agree. I would love to see it coming back, but the way you left Old Town, it's going to be a long, long time. And what does it do? 20 years from now, you come in and do it again. That's what he's proposing. This is our town, okay? The reason that people are here is, our opinion is this doesn't have to be done. This is a natural forest. Yes, I know it was clear cut. You can see a picture back there showing all the clear cutting that was in Lunenburg back in the 1800s when we needed the wood. This feels like a land and a money grab. And it's painful. I moved here for this. I stayed here for this. I want to die here, but I feel like I'm dying because of what you're proposing. It is killing me. It really is. This is horrible. This is absolutely horrible, because if you put Old Town on top of this, it's gone. It'll be gone for years. And somebody's making money. Double my taxes. I will pay double my taxes to keep you out of this little area. I promise. I'm writing a check now for $20,000 if you stay out of here. I give $20,000 of my own cash to please stay out of it. Please.
Yes, Paul?
My name's Donna Crow. I live on 520 Burridge Street, which is right here. I applaud what Bruce just said about this habitat. There's everything out there, deer, tree frogs, everything he said. We're all out there. I have lived there 25 years. My grandfather lived there beyond me, 100+ years down Burridge. I agree with the revenue. I don't understand what the revenue is. I also don't understand why in such a small town we're doing 2 of these at once. You're talking about small town. I do think this is different. I have 2 questions. One is how all that blue on the map is protected. Those are wetlands and the habitat. I don't understand how that is managed. And as an abutter, I also want to understand where and how we got notice. I don't know that I got notice, and my understanding of looking at the bylaws is if we're not notified, we need to be guaranteed we're 200 feet plus off of our property, but I don't even care about that because I don't want this to happen either. So the wetlands I'm not hearing about.
The wetland buffer strips?
Yep,
There's-
so all forest cutting plans have to be submitted to the state. State will approve all the filter strips, buffers, et cetera, in any work. And the state would approve any work being done.
So has that been approved? The town's approved this?
So
the
this
state's
is the
approved this?
first viewing we've had of the cutting proposal.
I mean,
So we
just-
have not submitted it to the state.
Okay.
Gary has just developed it for submission and public opinion.
Okay, because they're not just seasonal ponds, those are there year-round, some of those. And I'm against it, and I don't want it to happen either.
Okay? Yes?
Paula Bertram, 312 Townsend Harbor Road. I actively go on all conservation land. I'm a big hiker. My son is a big hiker. So we're out in all the different town forests. He was a former commissioner and led the walks in the woods, so I'm familiar with all the conservation land. And I have a couple questions and a couple comments. First is I'd like to understand why Rob's Hill is the next choice after small town versus some of the other areas, some of the other 1,800 areas. So that's my first question. Secondly is the commission keeps, and Gary keeps talking about small town forest as an example. Small town forest is right down the street from me. I walk it, and I'm surprised to hear the chair talk about bikes because having just walked it, I don't know how bikes are getting in there in some areas. The debris is truly everywhere. I'm concerned about one of the areas. The landing looks like a disaster zone. And as well as there's some runoff issues on the main trail. There's a real swath of erosion happening because of runoff now from the changed topography. There isn't a parking lot. Yes, there's an area that potentially could be a parking lot, but there's a lot of work that needs to go into that. So one of my concerns is the town had some revenue from that project, but I'm not seeing that revenue go back into that project. And my concern is starting another project before finishing that one and showing it as a true showcase of what can happen. I do understand why we need to do active management. I know that that's hard. I have a place in Maine and they just actively harvested, and I know it's hard to watch and it's hard to, but it has, the forest really is coming back. But the other side of it is, this is a huge recreational zone, and my concern is with the amount of tree harvesting you're doing, it essentially shuts down the entire recreational area. And that's a huge concern for me because it is so well used. And I would urge the commission to consider Commissioner Luck's comments to consider a smaller area, because I think this is too huge an area. I think essentially you're going to have to shut down the whole recreation zone while the harvest is happening. And that's another question that I have, is while the harvesting is occurring during that season, during that winter season, is the land off limits, so to speak? And my other question would be, what's the restoration plan? Because I don't see that happening in small town forest. So those are my 3 questions is, what happens with the, what's the plan, the restoration plan? Is the forest shut down, and why this forest?
So I can comment quickly on the why. We had 5 forest management plans developed, and this from the management plan and the state of the forest, seemed like the second best property to start on. The first one was Small Town, which had the hemlock issues and the Adulgid, and the state in here with all of the blowdowns and the ice damage and snow damage to trees.
Because of the density, you're what you're saying?
Yeah, there were several, out of the 4 remaining properties, this, to the commission's opinion, seemed like the next one to be worked on and maintained. That was why we had chosen. I'm sorry, if you need a comment, you're gonna have to go up to the microphone, so. But we did have the 5 forestry stewardship plans developed. So this property was the next in line, in our opinion, to be cut. Yes, they are. Yeah, they were put on the website the day that they were developed. So all 5 of them are on there, and they were done, again, by Gary Goldrip of New England Forestry Consultants in partnership with the Division of Conservation Resources. So they were reviewed and approved, because it was a grant that we got to pay for them. So they were reviewed and approved by the Division of Conservation Resources. So.
Is the forest shut down during the cut?
At this point, Gary, with this, what is your recommendation? Yes. The area that's being cut would be shut down. And roughly how long, if you did the 60 acres that is proposed here, how long would it take to perform the cut?
I'm gonna say close to a month.
Okay, so about a month shut down. And would it change if we did half, or would it still be the same amount of time?
Yep.
Okay, so,
Once they're finished in an area, the trails could be reopened.
okay.
Restoration, both for this property and for Small Town Forest, we keep pointing to that as going to Small Town Forest.
Yeah, we are working on the parking lot. Matt's working with a landscaper to get a bid packet ready to get out. Unfortunately, it just takes a little bit of time to go through the procurement and everything that we need to do for trying to hire outside contractors for that. So that is... The trail is still there. As you walk in, you hit the landing zone, the trail is on the left-hand side, which was the original trail. As you walk up the hillside, if you remember when we walked, if you remember when we walked out there prior to when we were reviewing the plan, that roadway had 2 deep cuts in it. It was barely walkable. You weren't getting a bike up there to begin with. I mean, right now, the trail, you can easily walk a bike, or you can easily ride a bike up there. And you can see where they've been riding the bikes up the main skidder trails and continuing out the original trail through the woods to Wombles. So Small Town was 240 acres, of which they cut about 25% of the overall property. So most of the cut was not done on the original trail area. Now, that just had 2 trails going through it. So the skidder trails that were left for people to go out and walk. And again, you're walking in the woods. It's not like you're walking down a concrete sidewalk. So you are gonna get blowdowns, you are gonna get debris. That's a very, very ledgy area, so there are pieces of ledge throughout the trails that stick up.
And can I,
Yes, Matt?
also excuse me, you referred to the money, the bid packages, the money will come out of that, whatever the bid packages will come out of that money. Also, part of the Small Town Forest is being targeted to have ADA accessibility. That and the Lane property and a portion of the Cowdrey is being examined right now for an ADA accessible trail, as well as improving the parking for an ADA accessible area. So that's part of the bid packet on Small Town as well. Also, with some of the other monies, well, some of the monies we generated, and some smaller expenses that we're funding. For example, we have 2 Eagle Scout projects that we've committed some monies to, $1,500 for repair work on bridges in the Cowdrey, and an unspecified amount yet for a new gate in the Pleasant Street Conservation Area. And Eagle Scout just redid the trails and the entrance in that area, and installing a new gate is part of the remaining portion of that project. We're gonna be funding the gate for that. That's coming out of that money as well. So, I mean, that's an accounting of what that money is gonna be used for, at least partial right now.
Yeah, and we did learn from the first cut that any works that we will need to do need to be put into that bid process. We unfortunately thought that we would have volunteers and the ability to get out and do the work that some of the work that you're talking about. And unfortunately, as volunteers, I mean, you said it, we all live in town as well. Was born here, I've lived here 50 years, so we too have Lunenburg at heart. So it's not like we're all gung-ho, we want to cut the trees down, we want to cut the forest, we want to make money. We're volunteers, we sit here just like all of you. This plan is being produced and put forth so that we can have comments, civil comments. We're not voting on anything tonight, this is the first time we've seen this, so it is a learning process for all of us, so. Some of the work that you are talking about, we do have to put, and we know this, has to be put into the bid and done all at the same time. Because we just can't get it done after the fact. The DPW can't help us with that. We have very, very limited volunteers, unfortunately, less and less Eagle Scouts every year offering to help us with that. So we have learned things from the first cut that we definitely are taking into consideration as we move forward.
So, you know, cleanup work and reestablishment work would be part of that package.
Yes, yep. Yeah, and again, we're not voting on anything tonight. This is the first presentation of this. Then we can sit down with Gary, review what he's presented, review the comments, and go forward from there, come up with some more ideas and plans, and meet with everybody again. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Dillon.
Just to follow up on that, and I thank you for reinforcing this is just the first step, and there will be more discussions and opportunities. But I would like to suggest that we, at the next discussion, not tonight, so we can all do some homework, especially me, because I'm drawing a blank on the discussion of how we chose this as the second step. So I'd like to maybe, as part of this process, revisit that and have that discussion again so the public can hear and participate, because I'm drawing a blank of how we got here, to tell you the truth, with this being the second one. I just don't remember.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, just where you haven't had a chance to speak, just if there's anybody that wanted to speak that has not had a chance. Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay.
Hello, I'm Robin Venezia, and I live at 1402 Massachusetts Avenue, so I am not in a butter, but I do passionately love the forests in this town. And my questions are probably more for the board, but Gary might be a resource. And it follows on what Paula said. My questions are, what do you do to repair? Because I walked in small town and I saw the trees that are down, and I walked before in small town, so I can compare the two. And I did see the erosion before the cutting, and I saw how they laid down the trees as corduroy to prevent erosion.
You mean water bars? That's what they call them, water bars.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yeah. It's a highly technical term.
And it is more difficult to hike, but I think in the long term I can see, I understand succession. I understand how you have disturbances in nature to have differences. So I philosophically am not against, but I wanted to address a few things that I saw from small town that I wanted addressed in the next project that we do, wherever it's done. How will the road access be repaired for parking and aesthetics to local homeowners that might abut the property? How will the trails that are crossed by skid trails be repaired so that they're good, comfortable walking trails that they are now? How will the landing area and the skid trails be repaired to prevent erosion? At Rob's Hill, for example, the elevation is very wavy, it's not flat, and so by having skid trails that go across, you need to make sure that there's no erosion. So could that be part of the plan? And then the big areas, like the landing areas and some of the wider skid trails, my question is, do we want to leave them open for meadows? Have we talked about this? Do we want a place that says an open meadow will allow deer to come in and hunters can come hunt? Or do we want to encourage brambles and blueberries to make it a place where people can forage? Or do we want the trees to grow back? I mean, have we made those decisions? So you have a big open area that you're creating in the landing area, So what do we want it to look like? Have we thought about what we'd like it to look like? Because we can do things that will affect which succession happens. Let's see. And then also, if you could include in the plan, what do you do if the soil gets so compacted by the machinery that nothing will grow? I mean, I'm a soil farmer, so I understand that without the communities in the soil, you have nothing above the soil. And for example, at Rob's Hill, I saw a lot of fungi, and that's all in the soil. So I know we're doing it in the winter, but what happens if the soil's not frozen when it happens? Do we have a plan and process to make sure soil compaction is addressed? And I have a couple of solutions.
Okay, great.
I don't want to take too much time, but I tried to do a lot of work here. In each of the stewardship plans, there are 5 goals. I know they're not exactly the same, but they're very similar. And I'm hoping they're not in order of priority. Can I say that they are not in order of priority?
Yeah.
Okay. So for example, one of them is enhance wildlife habitat. And so I thought, when you cut down a tree, you talk about the slash that's the top of the tree that you have to chip. Well, you've got some of that slash we could use to make brush piles. Brush piles create homes for small rodents to hide, to live in. If it's near water, then amphibians and reptiles can use those brush piles. And I don't know if we'd want to trust the forestry company, not you, but the company that we hire to make those brush piles, but maybe we could say we want you to leave some of that brush so that we can make those brush piles. Another thought I had was that well-placed wood chips can be used to prevent erosion. Well-placed wood chips can repair paths so that it's very comfortable to walk on. I'll share these with you. If you don't write them all down, I'll share them.
Okay. Well, and it is recorded too, so we can always go back for posterity and view it again.
Okay. So if anyone's walked on wood chips, it's a nice, comfortable bed, and also it protects roots. At Rob's Hill, there were places where roots were exposed from erosion because just using paths creates erosion, especially if you're using bicycles or... So maybe we could ask them to have a pile of wood chips that we could use to help repair those paths. But these are all things we need to think about before we do the cutting plan. So exactly what you said, let's learn from small town forest and proactively put them in our plan if we can.
Yep. Which would be items that we would put in. Gary necessarily wouldn't be. So
No.
that's why we just have the plan as it is today.
Most of my,
that's just what he's done.
yeah,
so.
most of my comments are for you.
Yep,
I just
perfect.
thought Gary would be a resource.
Yep.
Because I think this is really our job. And then Gary just tells us the best practices to achieve it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Carolyn Lucier, 23 Valley Road. And my questions are a bit about the economics and the finance aspect of this. So on Small Town Forest Road, I did read through the timber management plan section of each one of the PDFs that Gary provided. And on the Small Town Forest, it was projected, if I was reading it correctly, that there'd be 5,855 tons harvested.
Yeah, I don't have that information.
Well, I just added 3 numbers together that was in the,
Okay.
so it's expected that 5,855 tons.
Which property, ma'am? Small town?
Small town. There's only 3 numbers, 3,265 tons, 1,195 tons, 1,500 tons, for about 6,000 tons. So that yielded...
Yeah, I thought it was about 2,200 tons, but that,
If you have the thing in front of you.
yeah, I have unfortunately Rob's Hill in front of me.
You have what?
Rob's Hill cutting plan
All right,
on
so
small town.
let's use Rob's Hill.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else to do in the corner but math. Rob's Hill was 300 tons, 900 tons, 480 tons, for a total of 1,680 tons.
Okay, his plan does have 1,900, give or take, as a total.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just so everybody's on the same page, I think, the only thing that's in tons on the plan is chips. Is that correct, Gary?
Right, so the forest management plan gives you an estimate, and it's just an estimate. It could be plus or minus 30% on
But I guess the thing that I'm trying to point out is that's only in chips is what's recorded in tons. The rest is recorded in board
So
feet.
You have three products: board feet, saw timber, cords, firewood, and then chip tons, yes.
Okay, so I'd like to suggest that when we come back here, we write down every single different product in a chart with its you have that? Great.
It's all-
I
it's on
did
the
not
thing.
find it for each one of the projects spelled out like that. I
Well,
just found
that information isn't going to be in the forward stewardship plan. It would only be in the cutting plan once it's developed. When the forester goes out, selects each tree, records each tree, and comes up with his values at that point, so.
Okay, so-
In the cutting plan, do you have any more copies of it, Matt?
I only made about 8.
Okay.
It would be good to know, based on historical, thank you.
Because I figured I had, a lot of people
Based on
asking me
his-
for copies of it, so I emailed a bunch of
On the history of what happened with small town forest, what the projected yield was, what was actually yielded, and how much money was collected, and is that gonna give enough to do the slash management and the other things that we need to be doing in order to make sure that new growth happens? So in doing that, it would be good to understand, what the yield is on each one of these projects, what the projected budget or revenue would be, and what the budget would be for implementing improvements to better manage this resource. And talking to a friend, I understand a bit more, and one recommendation is that you have somebody from UMass Forestry come out and talk about slash, and talk about what, and how, after the cutter's cut, what you need to be doing versus just leaving it as it is, because that type of behavior just makes some people uncomfortable that we don't have a solid concrete plan, and it would be good to be a little bit more transparent about what money's gonna come in, what money's gonna come in on the other sites, how that money's gonna be spent, what your actual step-by-step, I know back of the envelope that you needed money for a parking lot and a gate and something, Eagle project or whatever, but like all of it, like black on white, where people can read it and say, okay, are these the right ways to spend the resource of this lumber? And so the concern that I have is like, why is it so fast? Why do you, like I realize the expiration on Gary's plans are 10 years. Like, are we just gonna be lockstep doing one every year? What's the projection so I can put my house up for sale that's near lanes and a large town forest, so I can get out of here before this happens? That's a joke, but I don't really like what it looks like at small town forest. It's not something I would come home from Boston and say, oh, I love this. This is great. It's not going to look good for 20 years. I understand it's a long-term gain. So if it's a long-term gain, why are we in a short-term rush? I don't understand that part.
Well, as far as a short-term rush, I mean, if we cut 40 or 50 acres of property under our management, we wouldn't go back to a single cut for 40 years. So, and that's assuming that we did one every year. I mean, we're just in the preliminary stage of this one. It's not something that's gonna happen anytime soon, but we're just continuing with the process of the maintenance of the properties. Again, it's not something that we're looking to have cut every piece of property every year, or try to go back and cut as often as possible.
And so then
And just one other quick note, it's very hard to develop the dollars and cents from the stewardship plans that you have.
Yeah.
The only way we're gonna get dollars and cents on the income side of it is after the plan is developed, put out to bid, and we actually get a value of what the project is, so it's not.
I work for a really large financial services company, and I can tell you there are people that can do math to figure out based on historical rates what you're projected to get. And I would hope somebody would be doing that versus just leaving it to the market conditions. Because maybe that right now is a really bad time to sell. Maybe we're not exporting as much lumber to China as we used to, and there's a glut. And it could be worth more in 5 years. Who knows? I don't have a crystal ball, but what I'm trying to say is you can do comps based on historical information to come at plus or minus kind of numbers. And it would just be good to understand that better, so that if you're looking to do forward stewardship as far as like slash and these new terms I'm learning, that you have the means to do that so that the forest grows back, and maybe selective, you know, if you want the oaks to come back, or if you want whatever your goals are, to have it sort of really well documented so we build public trust that this is really a stewardship plan, and versus something that, you know, my neighbor went for a mountain bike ride and was like, gosh, what happened to the small town forest? It was like from one day to the next. And maybe we're missing something, but just public education would probably serve you better.
Richard, if I could just address that really quick as far as the process, because I think that can answer some of the questions.
Okay.
The way this process would work, we
Yeah.
do the stewardship plan. Then we take that particular area, the stewardship plan was written, and those plans are actually approved by the state. It's not that Gary comes in, we get money for a grant, he writes a plan, and then we go to like willy-nilly execute a plan. That plan has to be reviewed by the state forester, okay? Has to be approved by the state forester as a valid plan that meets state standards for forest regeneration. And then what would happen from here is that Gary comes up with a suggested cutting plan. If, after public input, if the commission either reviews and approves this plan, reviews a modified version of the plan, reduced version of the plan, Gary can then take and estimate, based on what the approved plan is, an approximate range as to what we could expect based on market conditions as to what we should expect for bids. Then, under the, you know, the laws regarding, you know, purchases and acquisitions, you know, under town law and state law, we would then have to put that out for bid. We would put a prospectus based on what was approved. And then that would have to come in, we'd have to examine the bids and find out how responsive any bids we got were. If we get one bid that's non-responsive, we throw it out, we start over again. But before the bids even go out, even as Gary's estimating a range, this plan, or whatever iteration, if one is approved, would have to then go to the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, because they are also abutters, and we send it to them regularly anyway. We would send them this plan for their review. And then it also would go to the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, the Mass Endangered Species Program. They have every endangered species that's listed in this habitat. They have anything that's on the species of special concern. They look, they review this plan. They either give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a thumbs up with conditions. The last one, I actually got a call from the endangered species people because they thought it was a well thought out plan. But they gave it the condition it had to be cut in the wintertime between a certain period. And that's to preserve or to prevent turtle mortality, because it's the Blanding's turtle that was the species of special concern in the small town, as that also is present in Rob's Hill. So that's going to have to be examined by the state. So not only is it going to be subject to your scrutiny and to an eventual decision by the board, whatever decision is made is then going to be subject to further scrutiny by these agencies. And these agencies aren't easy, they're tough. So, you know, I hope this helps to answer your question.
Yeah, it does.
Maybe where there are ways we can modify it, but I mean, it's not like we haven't considered those issues. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that, that's all.
So then, like, just for an approximation for the small town forest, that whole process does sound formidable. How long did it take to go from where we are with Rob's Hill today to, like, what was the timeline for the small town forest, basically?
Well, I mean, this plan that small town plan got approved a little bit more quickly because we put out invitations for people to come and nobody came.
Well, and it did start several months earlier.
It did start, I mean, it takes months, you know? I mean, from the time we submit the plan, Natural Heritage has 30 days to give us a response by law. State Forester, he can give us he would basically, we have to notify the abutters of the plan, that we submitted it. The town and any abutter has 10 business days, I believe it's 10 business days, or maybe it's 10 calendar, I'm not sure, but they can write a response, and they can submit it to the state forester. Yeah, they can. Yes, they can. Don't nod no at me, they can.
I'm not saying anything, but...
I know, but you're nodding no at me, but they can. They can, you can send that in, and the state forester then decides whether or not he wants to incorporate comments. I've actually had private projects in other communities I've worked in shut down because I alerted the forester to the fact that they weren't designed for forestry generation, they were designed for growing houses. And then there were times I was unsuccessful because I knew you had a solar field going in another community. And then all of a sudden, the abutting property wanted to do a clear cut. And it was obvious it was to open up the sun, but because they were different properties, it's a loophole. Okay? So, I mean, there's a lot of oversight that goes into these. There can be public input, there's public input here. I mean, you're talking, by the time this thing is all done, you're probably talking January by the time we'd even probably get our first feedback at the rate this is going.
So then you're almost into the ground's not frozen anymore time.
And if the plan's good for 2 years, and if that's the case, we'd have to wait till next winter.
Yeah. It's all good to know, and it's just, you know, a little bit shocking as a resident to see so many of these plans coming up and not think, okay, what's behind this? And
Yeah, like for example, Dr. Mann mentioned Dunstable. I happened to flip on, me and my handy dandy computer, I happened to flip on Dunstable's website. They've actually, this winter, have 3 conservation parcels that they're doing cuttings on. 3 of them. And,
maybe they have,
lots of them.
you know, done a really good job, and maybe that's a model for us for cleaning up what it was that they had cut so that the public is more accepting.
Well, I think what the chairman was trying to say earlier too is that we've learned a lot of lessons on what we could improve, including the cleanup that everyone cited. I know there have been commissioners here that have expressed that maybe we shouldn't execute any further cutting plans, at least start the process but not execute it until we're finished cleaning up the small town area. You know, I have bids going out for that. There are plans to get that cleaned up, get the parking area done, do an ADA accessible trail. That's actually going to be going into our open space and rec plan that we're updating. There's a lot of planning that goes on. And to be honest, like I said, while we may disagree on some of the dynamics, having all of this input is exactly what we're looking for and exactly what we need to hear. Even if we don't like what we're hearing on our opinions. But that's the process.
People are like, not in my backyard, and I'm like, go slowly and make sure you're not getting ripped off.
Thank you. Any other questions from abutters? Just where you've already spoken once to make sure, because there was definitely talk in the background here, so. Yes, sir, if you could come up to the microphone. And again, like Matt said, we want to hear as much opinion as we can. This is our second cut. Our first cut, we advertised, we talked about it at selectmen's meetings, we talked about it at our meetings, we had it here on public access, and we got nobody. So this is the first time that we've really had any sort of public input on these plans. So, yes, sir, name and address.
George F. Martin, 522 Birch Street, 27-year resident. Please no booze, I want to make a point. ATVs, right? The ATV usage got tossed out of conservation land because it's sensitive environmentally. They widen trails, they cause soil erosion, they scare the animals. So, one thing I'd like you guys to think about, what's the difference between an ATV and a skidder, right? ATV has little tires. A skidder has, what, 4 big tires with chains on it?
Or at least, yeah, sometimes 6.
In a few hours, a skidder can do more damage than an ATV can do in my lifetime. Yet, you're gonna enable this to happen, most likely, but are you enabling usage discrimination? In the end, they both have the same impact, yet it's okay to to temporarily go in and disturb for what you perceive as a benefit, yet the ATVs were tossed out because the benefits those families were getting from being out there are perceived as being evil. I guess where I'm going with this is, I would like my concern to go to the town council and get him to weigh in on this. It's discrimination. Whether you like the ATVs or not, they're doing the same thing out there. And then my final question is, as I look at a few sites I found online, many towns in the conservation bylaws have rules that say no motorized vehicles. What do they know that we don't know? Why are we different? Thank you, and just...
Actually, our regulations do state no motorized vehicles, because the land, most of the time, is deemed for passive recreation only, and motorized vehicles are not considered a passive recreation.
So why is this an exception?
I mean, the state allows it, the state reviews the plans, it's a temporary access into the property for the maintenance.
I guess in the spirit of fairness, if you're going to allow this kind of damage to happen, the usage should open up for ATVs again to be out there.
Well, and damage is a matter of opinion. I think the skidders going in and cutting trees is a short-term.
So on ATVs?
Short-term, no.
Yep.
ATVs are...
I'm not going to argue with that.
I can meet you down on Pleasant Street, sir.
Yeah,
and the ATVs have destroyed that property.
Yeah.
ATVs travel the same trail every day.
You don't think these
cut
people
down
are
on
going
the
to say
plant
the same
material.
thing about logging?
Excuse me, sir, I let you speak. Okay? So they use the same trail every day.
Yep.
They dig down through the topsoil, they dig down through the plant material, and you get serious erosion problems from ATVs.
Can I...
So...
Plus they'll go through wetlands without consideration.
And so skidders don't do this?
But again, the skidder's in there, out of there, done. It's not the same as an ATV.
Really?
So, yes.
So an ATV leaves a path 20 yards wide?
No, the ATV just keeps using the same path until it's beat down to the gravel, and the gravel erodes.
Yeah.
And nothing ever grows back. The skidder goes in, the skidder cuts the trees. 3 to 5 years later, you don't even know the skidder's been in there.
Okay. I would still like my question passed by the town council.
You have it noted, Matt?
Yeah, I noted
Okay. Matt, we'll bring it up to the land use director in the morning.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Brendan Grady, Robs Hill Road, former school committee member, so I know how difficult it is to be a volunteer in town. Carl, we can go back a ways. I got a comment and I have a question. So as a fellow UMaine grad, I would have appreciated an answer for a skidder trail, right? It's 10 to 12 feet wide. For anybody that didn't know, I looked on Google. States regulate that actually, and they have priorities around that. So that's what you can expect on some of these feeder trails.
We were told by the law, otherwise it's
Yep. So it's just, I think everybody should know that. My question is, I've heard a lot of passion about what happens if we do this? My question is, what happens if we don't do anything? What happens if we leave it? I know exactly where you live, right? And I know what your view is. I live on sort of on the other end with the beautiful beaver dam damage, which has destroyed hundreds of acres. So what happens to this section if you do nothing from a forestry management perspective? What happens? Is it going to kill us? Is it going to burn down? Are we going to be California? Or is it just going to be a nice area that we can continue to enjoy with our dogs, ride our horses, ride our mountain bikes, ride our ATVs? But that's what I'd like to know. I'd like to get a perspective on that.
I'll just go back to the small town forest where I have an issue with an insect, and it was time to take care of an issue that would be catastrophic in terms of dead trees, fire potential, safety. When you're looking at a forest in terms of age, size class, diversity, there isn't a lot of diversity in terms of forest structure. And this is an opportunity to create that. Remove trees that are mature, ready to be harvested. Allow trees that are developing to get more sunlight, be more vigorous, and to establish
your next generation of trees. So it's when we're talking about forest health, and you're talking about tree health, this is one way of maintaining, producing, growing a forest for the future. It is, as far as I'm concerned, a wise use of your resource rather than allowing it to blow over. And you have that option. You can let it sit there. You can let it sit there and die, and that's one form of management.
Well, Gary, let me just ask the question to clarify his question. Sure. Let me just ask the question. If we left that section of Rob Hill sitting there, what's it gonna look like, in your opinion, based on what you've seen out there? What's it gonna look like in 30, 50 years?
I think a lot of these forests that have matured to the point of biologically they're mature, now they start in decline. We're gonna start to see dead trees, blown over trees. And it's just a function of its age and where it is in its growth.
And just a follow-on question, because you brought up
Excuse me,
a very valid
I'm just trying to clarify yours. Let me just clarify your points, and then you can go back to asking him questions. Because I think I know where you're going, as far as what you want for an answer for a question. So I'm just gonna go on, and then we can tag team with this one.
Yeah, let's try that.
So, how, in your estimation now, based on what you've seen out there, how much decline are you seeing percentage-wise of that forest? I know what I've seen.
It's in decline.
Okay.
You're probably seeing mortality 5 to 10% over a course of time. This is one of the reasons we got called into the city of Haverhill. They have done nothing, and the reservoirs are just blown over. And so you can leave them, you can do nothing. That's a management option.
Now, Gary, when we were walking the site on Saturday, I used the term widowmaker quite a bit. What's a widowmaker? Just explain.
It would be a broken limb in a tree that has potential of falling and
killing you. A widowmaker.
Yeah, sure.
Wouldn't make my wife happy. My ex-wife, on the other hand, but hey, that's a different story.
So let me ask the follow-on question.
Go ahead.
I picked up on one thing here. I heard you say this is one way of managing it, right? That's one option for us, right? So I'm hearing clear cut. Town forest is basically a couple weeks after Mount St. Helens. Let's be frank. That's what it looks like right now. Sorry, you don't like it, but it looks like shit. Oh, excuse me, it looks like crap. It doesn't look good. But, so what I'm asking here is, so you gave us options, and I love that. And I mean, I know you went to UMaine, so you know the forestry. What are our other options here? Besides going in and doing a lot of this, can we look at some other options? Because look, I'm looking at a lot of people that are sitting here. I know a bunch of them. They live in a butt this property. They're out there all the time getting covered in ticks just like me. It's amazing, right? What other options do we have? Are there other options besides going in and cutting a lot of these trees and culling them? Do we have an option that would leave something that doesn't look like the experimental forests in Maine, right? And you know what they look like. They are these barren areas, and they don't clear cut. They don't go in and cull like this. They take a slightly different approach. Should we be looking at something like that?
Myself, I'm a little confused because I go to Maine all the time, and I have never seen a cut as clean or as subjective as what they did at Town Forest in the state of Maine. I'm sorry.
I can list them, but...
Honestly, if you can, that's great, because I haven't seen them, and again, it's public comment, so if you have evidence to present,
you got it.
you'd certainly like it.
You got it 3/4 right. You guys already admitted it, right? That you missed a couple steps in the process, but are there other options for us, right? Are there other options besides what we're looking at here? I mean, I imagine there are. Can we look at something like that?
When you say clear cut, I would have to disagree with you. When you're talking about the management that we proposed, when you propose 33%, a third, that's not a clear cut.
It's a cull. I call it a cull. Pardon my terminology. Yep. I'm just a lowly salesperson.
You call it a single tree selection, group selection, but it's not a clear cut in terms of forestry.
And on average, how does that compare to what you've seen in other places? Because a third's a lot, right? A third for me is a good amount. That's 1/3 of my fiscal quarter, for example. That's a good amount of time. My real question for you to consider as the commission, as you look at the plans, it's sort of like when we got the new high school, right? Let's not just take one approach here, right? Let's look at the options that we have. I'm not criticizing what you've put out there. I don't want you to take it that way. I'm just asking you as the commission to put some consideration into some other options that we could possibly look at to help manage it. Ultimately, I'm a live and let live person, right? And it's going to do what it's going to do. It's been there for a million years. Guess what? It's going to be there after all of us are gone anyways, whether it survives or it doesn't survive. So all I'm asking is you consider some options, take into consideration what the people here in the audience have shared with you, and just give us some options, right? Don't make us just pick one thing. I appreciate it. I'll leave it at that. Thank you for that.
Quick question, Gary, on options. As you're the forester.
Yeah.
You're the professional in this.
Yeah.
If you can address that.
Yeah, as probably the biggest part of my job is timber management. And with any landowner, the driving force is revenue. And you can take the extreme and liquidate your resource, or you can harvest it so that you're producing a future for the generations to come, leaving your forest in a good, healthy condition. There gets to be a point where it's no longer economically feasible for you to maintain a forest at certain levels. There has to be something, enough timber as an incentive for someone to come and buy that timber. When you start looking at options here's an option, you can come in, you could cut just the dead trees and the hazard trees, and that's not going to produce revenue so that you can cover your cost. It starts to become an at-cost venture. So yes, you can. Those are options you can do. Do you have the revenue to take care of that? Can you, out of pocket, pay for that type of management? Well, if you can, great, that's an option. That's absolutely an option. But as a resource professional who's worked for other clients, the recommendations I make are harvesting to generate revenue so that you can put it back into your resource and continue to manage it in perpetuity. I continue to stress the importance of being a good steward, being able to use that resource wisely. We're not here to destroy it. We're here to control a controlled method of management over a period of time. So yes, there are options, but there are financial constraints that you have to evaluate prior to just going out and cutting dead and dying trees. Small town forest, we had dead and dying trees. One of the reasons we went there is because it had a commercial value before it was all dead. So that was an incentive to get there first. That was one of the first projects. So and the commission, I believe, is very clear that this isn't for financial top dollar, we want to grab everything we can. It's to wisely manage, be able to utilize the money that's coming in from trees that need to be harvested now. And that is just a perspective that I give as a forester to my clients. But there are options. And if you've got the money, you can go the other way and not harvest any economic tree of any value.
Yeah. And through the process, Gary, and I know, because you did the forest stewardship plans as well, the income was never a driving factor in any of the maintenance. I mean, when we first started talking about it, it was management of the properties.
We walked, I specifically stopped at a group of trees on the trail, and I said, okay, you understand that the trees that I did not mark right here are the highest value trees on this property. And then I showed them all the trees that I had marked that had little to no value. And that was my point. If we were here just for financial gain, I would have cut the trees that had the highest value, and I'd have left the other trees. And so that's why getting together and going out and looking at what we've done, and I'm glad to do it. It's part of my job. It's part of my job to be able to explain why I've marked certain trees that I have marked in order to get the harvest done. So when it comes to, when I hear it's just about financial gain, somebody's out here to make money. I'm a consultant, I'm being paid, but I'm being paid to follow a guideline, a method that is for long-term sustained management. And I think I'm doing what has been asked of me. I can only give my recommendations, and it'll be up to the board to direct my path.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am, we haven't heard from you.
Hi, Carol Hunt, 29 Valley Road. I'm a 20-year resident of Lunenburg, and I watched the video of the post-walk of the small-town forest. And you did say that many of the hemlocks were infected with the woolly algae. In doing some research, the other states around us, it's not legal to sell those trees. They have to be quarantined. So my question is it legal to sell those?
Yeah, no, there's
New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, I believe Connecticut.
There's no quarantine. There used to be a quarantine, and there's no longer a quarantine because it's everywhere in New England.
So it's okay to sell
Yes.
trees with invasive species in it?
Yeah. They chip anything that has no sawlog value.
So it's okay to spread it everywhere?
What you just said was
It
it's
is
already
everywhere.
That's all, there's
That's
already,
why they eliminated the quarantine.
there's no
on the woolly
quarantine.
algae.
There used to be, but there is no longer because it's everywhere.
There's still a quarantine on the Asian longhorn beetle areas, but there isn't on any areas infested with the woody
So I
algae.
just read a report from 2018 saying that they do quarantine.
It's not the,
So you're saying no?
I'm saying no.
Okay, I'd like to look into that a little bit more. And also, I just want to say, myself along with other people here, we moved to Lunenburg because of these trails. My husband and I mountain bike in the small town forest. It's not rideable. It is no longer rideable. My concern is, too, that you're not only just doing the small town forest and this plan, but all 5 in Lunenburg. 5 recreational areas that we all like to enjoy. So at the same time, in our lifetime, they're going to be gone.
They're not going to be gone.
Yeah, they will be gone. We
That's
can't
a
ride there.
false statement.
It's false that we can't ride mountain bike in there anymore?
I didn't say that, but they're not going to be gone.
So if they said that they're all going to be like the small town forest, and that's what we went to look at, how are we going to ride in there when we can't ride in the small town forest? It's a mess. I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but truckload upon truckload upon truckload of good-looking, healthy trees was taken out. It's a mess. It's not cleaned up, and here we go. Let's do 4 more. I think the people of this town deserve to be, it should go out to a vote. We're the ones that use the land. Why should this small committee here decide what happens to our recreational land that we enjoy? And that's it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, and we're going to have to close this up really quick. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. First thing, you mark the trees out there. You're saying you didn't mark the trees with no value. I saw hardly any widowmakers marked or any of the big dead trees marked. Trees next to it marked, trees behind them marked. The big dead trees not marked, the widowmakers not marked. If you're going in there to clean this place, shouldn't that stuff be going too? Or there's no value in it, right?
We talked about that, on the trails, we talked about trees that were along the trails we would try to get, and they were called snag trees. If they're far enough off the trails, they're good wildlife habitat too. So we won't take everyone, but we can, if that's what the committee, we can take them all.
And what I have here is almost 100 signatures from all the abutters around this property who don't want it touched. It's not.
Okay. If you can leave it with us, sir, that's great.
Yeah, they don't want the area touched.
Okay.
And like you said, we own the property. And
Great.
like she said, they have 6 people, I know you're all volunteers, not saying you're not doing your job, I think you guys do a good job, it's just, majority of the people in the area don't want to pass.
Okay.
Really being misguided.
All right, we had, yes, Lisa?
I was looking online, just Googling different things, and I found a pamphlet, the Mast Forestry Best Practices Manual. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
So they have required practices and recommended best practices, and they were talking about different things. Now, I'm not a forester and I don't remember it all, but, you know, like leaving some of those tops in for the wildlife, like 20%, or I'm not sure of the numbers, I don't remember. But I think it's important, if we're gonna do something like this, that we should strive to do better, not just required, but what are the best practices? And maybe to pull in, I also heard a radio program the other day about the mushrooms in the soil. And if you're cutting down all these trees, you're gonna kill the mushrooms, you're gonna change the habitat for them, and they're very important for holding CO2 and controlling climate. And I know my summer was really hot, and all these trees are gonna be gone. I'm really concerned about, you know, the inability to absorb the heat or provide shade and coolness for the animals.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I'm Kevin. I'm at 48 Robs Hill Road. I had a question, I guess, about the...
Excuse me, Kevin, were you the one that emailed me?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, your email is in the file, I just wanted to, I promised you I would make sure it was in there, okay?
Yeah. So over on Flat Hill, I don't know if you know where the corner is, there's one entrance into the area that's going to be logged. There's a bunch of, oh, Sunset. Okay, Sunset, yeah. There's a bunch of knotweed over there, and once you open up the forest and, you know, cut down all these trees, what preventative measures do you have so the knotweed just doesn't spread into there? There's also, I think, some bittersweet too, down on Burridge or something like that. Like, what are you gonna do about all the bittersweet and knotweed, and maybe there's other stuff out there too? How are you gonna prevent that from coming in and possibly hurting?
Do you find an issue with invasives after a cut?
Nope, probably and we talked about this as well the other day. The forest interior, there's basically nothing in terms of invasives. Where you see it is along houses and roadways. And in terms of it spreading, limited and can be controlled through applications.
So will that be part of the plan if it does spread, to make an effort to...
At this point, we don't have any plan to try to limit the invasives.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they're out there in the wild anyways, so.
All right, one other question. I know you guys, one of the points is to get rid of all the dead and dying trees.
Well, not necessarily all the dead and dying trees. Some are left outstanding for wildlife habitat.
So, I mean, some of the dead trees, are those like gonna be, like, I know you have like your trails that you walk on and all that, and then will there be dead trees in here, you know, where you don't walk and all that? Why would you cut those down when, you know, they create habitats for woodpeckers and, you know, they fall over. They create habitats for salamanders, so why would you be taking those away when...
We don't take all of them, we take some of them.
That's what, I think I just addressed that we would try to get the ones along trails, ones that are in the interior that don't have... We would try to leave the ones in the forest interior that wouldn't have any...
And you'd only just be targeting the ones that might be of danger to people
Safety.
walking by?
Yep.
Okay. All right, that's all for me.
All right. Yep. And unfortunately, that'll be the last one because we do have other business, so we have to...
Again, this is Bruce, man. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to. I agree. Why can't we, there's a lot of people here that don't want it in their backyard. I agree, it's the backyard. You said there's a lot of areas and you'll come around again in 40 years, put this one on the burner, keep the back, the ones that are not in people's faces all the time. We see this day in and day out, not on a trail when we can go on the weekend. Literally, we go in there all the time. let us see what happens with the other forests, the ones that are further out, see how they grow back, and see if it is good. I've tried to keep an open mind. I think I saw some areas in Dunstable that did that, but I also saw some areas that looked horrible. I just don't do this area. This is a very, very valuable property for a lot of people. Please, give us a chance. I know you have the ability to roll over us. Please don't. Please don't. Do it somewhere else that is out of the sight and not going to affect all these people, their property value, their passions. When you do this, I've got a month that I can't go through this woods without getting in a car and driving somewhere else. And I go out every day in this winter, snowshoeing, spiking, my dogs go out with me every day, twice a day. And this is where I go. This is where I go.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will be concluding this open discussion. And we definitely have some input to examine. And as long as everybody that is here that is interested, make sure you've signed in on the log. And Matt will contact you as well as when we publicize it the next time we meet to review this again. All right, thank you very much. Is anybody here from Solitude? Excuse me. Excuse me. What? Okay.
There should be somebody here from Solitude. It may not be Dominic, there may be somebody else.
If I might ask, we do have continuing hearings, if we can take the discussion out. You see anybody here? Hey Todd, how's it going? I thought you weren't coming. I wasn't. Are you glad you came?
Are you here for the duration?
Yes. Okay.
I usually have to tag that.
At 9. Well,
I mean, I can stay, if we're in the middle of a hearing, I'm not gonna get up and leave, but as close to 9 as I can.
Okay, this should go pretty quick.
Is there anyone here from Solitude Lake Management?
We're gonna be here until tomorrow.
What's that? Is Dominic here? Yep. Okay.
All right, is there anyone else here from Solitude?
No.
Are you guys pumping me up right now?
No, there was another Solitude item on our agenda for Brockman's Pond, but if nobody's here, we're not gonna take it up.
Yeah, Dominic had called me and said he wasn't coming.
Okay.
Do you want me to go to the slot?
Unfortunately, it's listed as that slot, or we certainly would. All right, if everybody can please be quiet, thank you. Moving forward, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 as amended, in the Town of Lunenburg Wetland Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a continued notice of intent by Michael Nault of MJN Realty Trust for the construction of a single-family home within the buffer zone at 141 Hemlock Drive. Actually, Mike, you can sit here. We just did that for all the public. You just pull a chair up.
I think he's got a drawing too.
We're keeping you up? You are. What's that? Water. No, I gotta actually go use the restroom here between something here.
Oh, you want a water? Oh, I love a water drink.
Okay.
That's all right.
Yep.
Todd, a water?
Actually, if you put it in the same spot, because then you can talk from the microphone.
I still don't see any solid lines.
What's that?
I'm still looking for solid lines. Solid lines are the post.
Oh, it is in there.
Yeah, I'm just having a tough time finding it.
Okay. Yeah, let me find it. It definitely was there.
What were you looking for?
Thank you. I am looking for the plan that he submitted, or Carl was looking for it, I just want to bring it up to you.
I've got the plans, I just can't. Thank you, John. I'm not seeing any solid lines.
There's actually surprisingly few.
That's why I can't find them.
Right there, whoop, no, right there, those lines going into the corner. These on this side, those on that side.
Yeah, back here we've always had them.
Yep. Yeah, they really are.
This is,
That's the only, so, then this is the 50-foot, kind of limit, we have the limit of work at the 50-foot.
I apologize to send a comment that the 100-foot line is missing. These are the ones there. This is thank you. Judge, if I was there.
I'm gonna stand next to you, Mike, when you describe this.
And this is a copy of the plan.
Did Rich open this yet? I don't think he opened it yet.
Not yet.
So in a nutshell...
I don't think we've opened the hearing yet, so just hold off.
No problem.
Did you just read his statement?
I don't think he did,
Matt
did
said
he?
he didn't.
I don't think he did.
About what?
Rich hasn't opened his hearing yet, I don't think.
Yes, he has.
He did?
He opened it,
Oh, okay.
Actually, he did read the statement. I stand corrected.
I wasn't paying attention.
I wasn't paying attention.
You want to wait for Rich?
from the last,
Okay, go ahead.
I've waited this long, I mean, we can wait for Rich. He was at the walkthrough, so... This has your 100 foot, it's got everything. I got a little. It's super nuts now. Just walk down here, every stone, like the elevation, the steps, like that's around everything. She redid the drainage up here, so that it's self-contained, so it's catching and stuff. Catch basin on the driveway.
You know, she called. She didn't tell you she called. They said because of the baby. We thought she was putting her in veins instead of formally withdrawing it, so that when it's time, she doesn't have to come back.
Yeah, kids need to go to bed in like 50 minutes.
Yeah, so is your conservation administrator.
No, she can't, so she actually stamped it, and they can do it as a joint. Doug has to put the final. She's not too happy.
We waited for you, Rich.
Do it.
So anyways, what I've done since the last meeting is I involved Rose from Roseland Surveyors and did a joint venture with Doug from Soilsmith to pretty much, I can't think of anything on this plan that wasn't addressed now. You guys had some, looking for final elevations, some drainage issues, erosion control as far as a path going down. I think you have copies of the plan if you look at it. Unless I'm missing something, I can't think of anything we didn't address. I mean, everything's there, all the way through. We've tried to maintain the integrity of the property, so I guess give you guys some time to digest this, but if you got any questions, here I am.
All right, one thing we had talked about, Mike, when we did the site walk, one of the commissioners had suggested an elevated stairway going down so that you weren't disturbing the slope And it doesn't look like that's what,
Rose was dead set against that. She said,
Okay.
first of all, it's ugly. Second of all, stairs corrode and collapse eventually. Instead, as you see, like grading, I'm sorry. I don't like microphones. She's got stones all in here that fit every inch of the elevation down. She's got them all placed, all exactly where they'll go, so there's no digging involved. It goes with the grade that's already there. The one place she does, in one of the footnotes, when it gets to the dock itself, there's an area there that needs either a small set of stairs or a ramp to go in there to get to the dock, so that you're not messing with the shoreline, I guess. So, that was her opinion. I guess
There are larger plans.
I liked her idea better, honestly, but if you guys want a set of stairs, we'll put a set of stairs, I guess. I mean, but she was pretty adamant about not doing that you could use the current grade that was there, so.
From note 2 on the plan,
Yeah.
it indicates that there will be minor cuts and fills, limited to 9 inches or so.
Right. Yeah, there will, I mean, you're putting them in, but as far as,
No major
nothing no major elevation changes, using what's there.
and the spaces between the steps are gonna be level or slightly tilted back? We're not gonna have a grade continuing?
No, they can be set however, we can grade them back, no problem. Right, she paid a lot of attention to making sure that nothing's going that way.
Okay.
It's
And any trees coming down along the bank in there, along the slope?
Nope, not in there at all.
No trees at all in that area?
You guys walked the property, there were 2 trees marked, basically right in this area right here. And that's it as far as that whole front section, the whole front section. The trees that are being taken are for the footprint of the house and the septic system.
Like a drainage trench in. I talked to her about that today. She told me with the permeability of the soil that she has there and the way she designed it to be less intrusive to the ground and less intrusive to the environment overall as far as, but it's still able to intercept anything from going into the road.
You mean into the lake?
Into the lake, rather. She also told me that in order for this thing to short circuit, the area would have to be flooded out, frozen, full of ice, and then have a sheet of rain for like 2 inches in 10 seconds for that thing to even malfunction. She said that's how good the permeability of the soils is when she was out there.
Yeah, that was, before we were going into the sewer system and into the drain system, and that's another thing she was kind of against, so.
What's that?
I like the idea that she had off the driveway, what she's done with the.
She did a drainage
She's
trench
got the
there.
drainage, she's got a drainage system designed there, so it's gonna keep it off the road, it's gonna handle it, no problem at all, and it's not gonna go into the drains at all now.
She felt DPW wouldn't be pleased with trying to go
No,
into
probably
that
not,
system.
huh?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Luck?
Any questions?
I just don't, right behind the wattles, there's a rectangular box with a blue line in it. What is that, Mike? I don't know what that is.
I think that is like a dry well for the drainage around the house? Is that what I'm seeing?
I need to see the big plan.
She's got drainage designed to come off the foundation of the house, and it carries into here, going in, so, in other words, it's not gonna come off the house and go into the water, that's subsurface.
Right, that's a subsurface trench.
Yeah, that's a trench drain.
Trench drain, okay.
But it's not collecting water in front of the house, it's the perimeter drain that's running out and dissipating there at the 30-foot no-touch?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I guess the first question I would have, or another question, when we last had a house that was in this precarious of a position, we had made the 50-foot no structure buffer line the limit of work. So other than, as long as the steps are not sloped at all, that you're collecting the water, so the water's not gonna run down that walkway. It'll hit a stair, settle, hit a stair, settle. You're not gonna have a problem of continual erosion.
I'd be
would-
pretty surprised if she did it. She's pretty thorough with all that. She's,
Yeah, that would be my biggest suggestion now that we have the final gradings, is having the 50-foot no build line as the limit of work. And I'm not sure if she can, I'm not sure, I don't see why she couldn't bring the, that infiltration trench up to the 50-foot.
oh, I understand.
Yep.
She said she might be available by phone if you wanted to call her tonight and ask her questions. If you wanted to do that, I could do that. If not, we can wait.
Well, we can present them to her and then she can review it, because we'd need it on the plan anyways if we were gonna change it. But just to preserve as much of that banking as possible. 'Cause,
Well,
I mean, it is in a pretty
think
precarious
If
spot.
you remember right, where she has that, and it's probably intentional why she did it.
Yep.
Because there's a natural berm there. There's a berm that comes across, and that's actually, house side of the berm.
Yep.
So I'm guessing that, that's what she's thinking with runoff, that's probably the best spot to take it out of. So.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, other than that, you've satisfied most of the concerns that we had as far as the finished grading. And we can, in our conditions, we can address making sure that the bankings are stable and a construction schedule on when we're gonna be in there so that we limit the potential of erosion.
Yeah.
And get it in and out. That would just be, that's the only thing I would be looking for, is just move the limit of work back to the 50-foot, no structure.
And I can address that, like I said, I believe because of that berm.
Yep.
Just looking at it, that's where the water's gonna collect.
Yep.
So if the water's gonna collect there, it seems like the obvious place to have it drained at that point.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, if the soils are...
To bring it back roughly
20 feet.
20 feet, I think it's fine with me. I have no, where it is, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking now you subject that land forward from, where this is gonna catch it before that, that's all. So.
Well, and again, the purpose of the trenching is to collect the water from the house, not to collect the water from the house to the 30-foot. It's a
Right.
closed system from the house down, so the
right,
placement
right,
of the trench
right,
really isn't,
right.
in my mind, we're just looking to protect as much of the banking and...
That's fine, yeah.
And we do have precedents, we have held others just to keep that slope
Okay.
in as natural and undisturbed, because once you start moving that gravel around, then you start to damage all the tree roots, and all of a sudden, it all slides down into the little pond there.
I mean, in fairness, that area, that's pretty, from that berm back, it's already dug out. It's all level, it's all level back all the way through. It's not like we'd be going in and even touching any of that. We wouldn't be, other than put the trench and put that in.
Okay. If we did that, would you be willing to revegetate it, or tree it? I mean, the biggest thing, I don't want to see the lawn going right up to the edge, or a patio going right up to the edge. I mean, we really want to
I've said,
stop intrusion at 50
I've said numerous
feet.
times, number one, I hate cutting the grass.
Yep.
The property is going to be for resale. I want to keep it as natural as possible. I don't even want a lawn here. I just want a wooded lot is what I want. So to replant, yeah, no problem.
And is this going to be your house, Mike?
No, it was, my initial intention was as, a possibility of a downsize for me. For various reasons, I've chosen not to move there at this time, so.
All right, any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Yeah, the only comment was that I'd support your idea, as long as there's no technical issue that the engineer has with moving that back and to the 50-foot. and then having that be natural vegetation and not disturbed, so. I think
Or, I take it that's a closed trench, correct? It looks like it is here.
Yes, yeah, it's, I believe she has it, they have it, no,
Is that the interceptor drain?
right here.
Okay,
up top.
yeah.
So it's got the stone.
So she does have, it looks like some stone exposed. Okay, yeah, I mean, we go back to her with if we left the trench at the 30-foot and just cleaned up and revegetated with trees and native plant species from the 30 to the 50.
Prefer that, actually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a problem with that, or if she can just move it out of the 30, but either way, put it back.
I'll run both ideas.
Okay.
by and-
Yep. Yeah, and just clarify with her that the stairs are going to be, level. You're gonna have landings between
Yeah,
the stairs, so.
She was, pretty proud of those stairs, so,
Yep.
and knowing her, she really put some effort into all
Mm-hmm.
this, so.
And if she needs to add another, because it looks like you've got the walk's going down a bit. And what is pro gravel? It's just, it says pro gravel walk.
Yeah,
Up above the stairs, she just has pro gravel walk.
the pro waddles too.
And what's that?
That's pro waddles.
Pro waddles too.
Abbreviation?
I mean, I can try, attempt to get her on the phone, I'm assuming it's
Okay.
it's an all-natural material.
Yep, either that or if we can have a spec sheet or something on it, just to, I mean, it sounds like she's taken the erosion into consideration, we just want to make sure that we've got it documented.
No,
So-
she didn't like the whole front area, she just
Yep.
kind of took it over and really, you know, and this is what I've been trying to present to you the whole time.
Yes.
We've been having a tough time getting there, I guess.
Yeah, we seem to have several reiterations of the same exact plan, it just
Yeah,
didn't quite,
Right, so.
we didn't have what we have today, which is
It was definitely a
finished.
stumbling block, but by, you know, by finding Rose and having Rose involved in this, it-
Okay. Well, did you want to take those two ideas back to her, and,
I can do that.
okay, and other than that, I don't see any other issues here, just that front landing, trying to stop the construction at the 50-foot, and then revegetating between the 50 and 30.
Okay.
And so it looks like all of the cuts and everything are gonna be back beyond the 50, because it looks like you're putting the house down.
Yes, yep, the house is gonna be a walkout.
A walkout, yep.
Yep.
But yeah, it looks, I mean, with the grading, you're taking all of the trees on the rest of the lot off, so we really need to protect that 50-foot on,
Yep.
so. All right. And again, no questions from the commission? Any questions or comments from the public on 141 Mopus Road? No. All right. Hemlock Drive, what'd I say? Mopus Road, yeah. Hemlock Drive. All right, so at this point, with your permission, we'll continue it and let you take the questions to Rose.
Okay, so come back next meeting?
Yep, and as long as she gets it in there and we've got it all on there, I mean, now we have everything, so.
Okay.
It should be pretty straightforward.
All right.
And then if she has any questions, she can contact Matt. Matt has a pretty good idea what, just that final area we're looking to get settled.
Okay.
All right.
See if you can bring her with you actually to the next meeting.
It's a possibility.
Because, well, I mean, we're gonna have that, we should have that info in for the next meeting from Brian Marchetti.
Oh, so she
on
might have to be
Reservoir
here
Road.
anyways?
So she may have to be here anyway.
Okay.
I talked to her about that this morning as well.
Okay, see if you
I'll
can
mention that to her.
coordinate with her, so. All right, perfect.
What is the day of the next meeting?
October 3rd.
Okay. All right. We'll see you guys then.
All right. And with
Is there anything with the town forest or anything before, or?
At this point, no.
I might show up a little later if so. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. With the permission of the applicant, we'll continue till October 3rd. Do we have a motion? We have a motion, Jack, do we have a second?
Second.
Kenny, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, Mike. Moving forward, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a continued public meeting on a notice of intent by Hickory Hills Association for the approval of a drawdown management plan at Hickory Hills Lake. All right, I did talk with John Fortune this morning, and
Recusing myself?
and he has not contacted the Department of Fish and Game, which was the #1 request of the Fisheries and Wildlife, if they're gonna do a drawdown of more than 3 feet. So he has requested a continuance while he pursues Fish and Game. And I'll accept a motion to continue until October 3rd. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended, in the Town of Lunenburg Wetland Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a notice of intent by Mitchell Bixby for the upgrade of a septic system in the 100-foot buffer zone at 217 Reservoir Road.
Mr. Chairman, I do have to step out from the rest of the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we still have 4?
Yep.
Okay. Jim, did you officially recognize Todd coming in? Todd Dwyer is present?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make a note of the minutes as to, I timed when we walked in, so I'll make a note.
Just in time.
It was actually 77.
Yep. Just in time for the pitchforks and torches.
That's next week.
Okay. And if you just talk into the microphone. Sure. Super.
Good evening, I'm Neil Gorman from David E. Ross Associates, representing the property owner Mitchell Bixby at 217 Reservoir Road for a sewage disposal system upgrade for an existing 3-bedroom dwelling. The plan here shows Reservoir Road at the bottom of the page, long gravel driveway coming into the property, proposed dwelling here. There's a wooded area around to the back of the property, behind the house and to the north of the house. On the side, there's basically an existing lawn. The existing sewage disposal system is on this side of the house to the north. Well to the rear of the property off the page, but on this page here, I moved a picture down. There is a perennial stream to the rear of the property. The green area is the vegetated wetland associated with that stream. And then there's a 1, 5, 10, 15, about a 20-foot high esker between the stream and the occupied area of the property. So that's to the rear of the property. This more bold red line here is the 200-foot riverfront zone from that stream. To the front of the property, there are some kind of look like excavated open ditches that run through the woods, probably to help with drainage in this wooded area between the house and Reservoir Road. We're simply proposing a new sewage disposal system in the general area of the existing system, and it's going to be a slightly raised up system, so we are going with a new 1,500-gallon septic tank, followed by a 1,000-gallon pump chamber, and then our leach field off to the side here of approximately 450 square feet. All the proposed activity is an existing lawn area that's being maintained now. We're not going to be requiring any tree removal. On the abutting property over here, their sewage disposal system is just over the property line in a very similar landscape. So, although we are in the 100-foot buffer zone of the vegetated wetland associated with these ditches in the woods, we are outside of the riverfront zone, and we are in an existing maintained lawn area. When the project is done, the area that we are disturbing will be seeded with grass thereafter. So we've submitted the notice of intent for the activity within the 100-foot buffer zone. We did go to the Board of Health Monday night, had a public hearing regarding the variances being requested for the Lunenburg Board of Health regulations and a local upgrade approval for Title V, and the project was approved by them on Monday night. So with that, the bold black dashed line here is the siltation barrier that will wrap to the north of the project and then along the westerly side of the project around the tree line at the edge of the lawn. And that's a quick presentation, so I guess I'll turn it back to the commission.
Time frame for construction?
he wants to sell a house, he'd like to get it in before winter.
Okay.
He's seeking bids right now, and his goal is to get started as soon as possible.
And stockpile area is gonna be in the driveway, behind the house?
I would think probably more accessible here in the gravel driveway area closest to the proposed work.
Okay. So no trees cut, and how much of a fill? It looks like about a 4-foot mound?
Well, the topography from the house is fairly flat off the house, then it starts to dip down right where the system is, so that location was also chosen because it's gonna tend to flatten out that side yard. So the final grade on this side of the property here, there is about a 3 to 4 foot fill on the corner over this side, but as you come back to the house, it's only about a foot different. It's kind of a natural low spot now that will be filled in.
And I imagine, do you excavate the soils with the old septic system and the tank were?
Yeah, the old tank is basically in the location of where the new one is going, so that'll be disposed of according to Title V.
Yeah.
And new one installed. Any portion of the existing system that they encounter, we may hit portions of it, that gets pumped out and removed before the clean Title V material is brought in.
I don't have any other questions. Through soil testing, there was no other place on a property to put this?
Again, given that we were trying to stay away from the riverfront area, and there are some large pine trees in the backyard, it was just kind of the ideal spot for the the integrity of the property, the aesthetics of it. It is a gravelly soil, so, but we do have a fairly shallow groundwater.
Okay.
So, given the site and given the integrity of the property, this was kind of the ideal spot to put it.
Okay. So you've taken that into consideration? All right, I myself have no other questions. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
That's fine.
And this was an NOI. Any questions or comments from the public on 217 Reservoir Road?
I'd recommend a standard order.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, it's fairly flat, it's fairly, improved as it is now. Make sure the hay bales and silt fence are in place prior to, and contact Matt for approval.
Correct.
Okay. At this point, I'll accept a motion for approval for the standard order of conditions.
So moved.
We have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Hey, Neil, you gave me something about Saliba.
Correct.
With a crossing.
Correct.
Can I ask you what that was about?
It was we wanted to have a discussion with the commission about where we're at with the proposed development options there, and whether or not the commission would allow me to introduce the project to them and get an opinion as to whether or not one driveway crossing or two, we're seeking the one driveway option. And I have some information, if you wanted to do that later in the night, I can hang in there for a little bit.
Oh, it's up to you. I mean, you can bring it in if you want. You can do it now. I mean, I looked at it, my opinion is a one driveway crossing is
I have some information, I can hit it right out to you if you want.
Okay, that's something we can take a quick look at.
Okay, thank you. Cover is the letter I sent along the map, and I just put more information together for you.
This one pulled out.
Yeah, she,
Not
yeah,
continued,
just done because she's having a baby. So
Okay.
she wants to wait until it's spring.
Okay, just wanted to see if it was continued or if she's just gonna reapply.
She's gonna reapply.
So what I put in your little package of information
Neil,
there.
before you go on, if you could excuse me, if anyone's here for 44 Pine Acres, the applicant's withdrawn that proposal, so that won't be heard. Okay, just checking.
So in your package of information is just a quick cover letter asking for a quick discussion with the commission. Second page is the ortho view of the site, and then the two 11 by 17 plans are the same plans I have in front of me here. You're probably all familiar with this property. It abuts the southern portion of the Settlers Crossing Golf Course on the east side. This was a portion of the land that was originally part of the Highfield Village subdivision that was coming in from behind Walmart and then back out to Northfield Road.
Is Lot 1 being built on?
I'm sorry?
Is Lot 1 being built on?
Lot 1 is being built on right now, correct. And Lot 1 and 2, we had come before you, we divided those off last year. Lot 1 needed a notice of intent, we had that. Lot 1 didn't need anything.
Okay. Lot 2 needed the NOI, you mean?
Correct, I'm sorry, I'm mistaken. Lot 2 needed the notice of intent. That's not being built right now, but Lot 1 is.
Lot 1, okay.
So this is the remaining land that is associated with where those two lots came out of. And the remaining frontage that we have would allow for 4 A&R lots or frontage lots, not subdivision lots, but simply with using the allowable frontage per the Lunenburg zoning, we could create 4 fairly large A&R lots, equaling on average 3 of them around 8 to 10 acres apiece and 1 about 30 acres per piece, for the final piece. Our client is looking to do this where the previous proposals that have gone through have been 20 or 30 houses going in here. He just wants to do the 4 A&R lots and keep it simple. But as we keep studying the zoning regulations, Lunenburg has a bylaw that only allows 2 houses to share 1 driveway. The wetlands that were originally shown on the old Highfield Village subdivision plans that were before you by others didn't quite show or represent the wetlands as we have them there today. The wetlands bisects the whole frontage that we have. But there are some narrow points that we could certainly bring a driveway across and still be considered a limited project. So the first plan here shows 2 driveways, each one serving 2 dwellings, which is compliant with the current zoning bylaws in the sense of 2 per shared driveway. We would like to talk to possibly the Zoning Board of Appeals as to whether or not we could seek a variance to reduce that just to 1 driveway to serve 4 houses. And we were wondering if the commission would entertain issuing an opinion stating that certainly 1 crossing is better than 2 for the protection of the wetlands and for the amount of disturbance that would certainly cut down the disturbance in half of what we would need to cross a wetland to bring those driveways in. This is, a wooded area. Obviously, bringing 1 long driveway in versus 2 would save the amount of tree removal and earth disturbance out there. And we could certainly find the ability to create a safe turnaround for larger vehicles, emergency vehicles at the end, without having to create a big subdivision road just for 4 houses.
So the line, the dotted line going around these 2 wetlands, including the bylaw one, is the 100-foot buffer zone, correct?
Yes.
So basically, alternative B would have to go in front of the ZBA. It would reduce wetlands impacts and stay entirely out of the buffer zone instead of actually going into what looks like the 30-foot no-touch.
Be pretty close, yeah.
Yeah.
For the other driveway.
So essentially, under our bylaw, what you're showing is, if the ZBA says okay, you're showing a viable alternative to reduce wetlands impacts, so we'd actually wind up having to compel you to do option B.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's totally the commission's call as to whether or not they want to go that way, but that's my interpretation of the bylaw. That if the ZBA goes along with this, he can show an alternative means of egress.
Again, these are the 4 areas way out to the rear of the property, which are out of the buffer zones and really kind of a quiet spot of the 55 acres that are there for 4 simple houses. We talked to the planning office, and they thought because the lots are over 5 acres too, that's a good part for, the use of the land. 4 houses on 50-something acres is,
Bless you.
kind of goes along with the town planning idea of having larger lots and setting them further back, but the only hangup is, 2 driveways going side by side, whereas, for single-family dwellings, a lot of towns have more than 2 houses on a shared driveway.
So essentially no Highfield Village?
No Highfield Village, no major utilities coming through.
One other quick question, Neil, and you might have to ask your client about it. I certainly agree that the one driveway to the 4 houses, from our standpoint, is a far better solution. Would the homeowner or the owner of the property be willing to put a conservation restriction on the lots, that there will only be 1 residence per lot?
They wouldn't be able to divide it otherwise.
Well, the only reason I ask is because we're told that all the time, and all of a sudden, somebody buys a piece of property next door.
I would think that was a
Yeah, because I kind of watched that just down the street where we took land out of recreation because somebody was putting a house, and all of a sudden we had 10 house lots.
Okay, yeah, I would certainly...
Because these are fairly large lots, I'd like to just take and say...
Giving my discussions, I don't think he would object to that.
Okay.
So I can certainly talk to him.
Yeah, and that would hopefully help alleviate some of the ZBA's concerns that we're making a precedence.
Sure.
If we tie up the lots, you have 1 house per lot, we're definitely limiting our wetland exposure to it.
I think that's a fair agreement, sure.
So it would certainly go a long way with us.
Okay.
I mean, it's already a better proposal.
And if that's something he would agree to, then you certainly could provide us with a statement of some sort so that when we apply to ZBA...
Yeah, we would just have to put it on the agenda to vote on it, but certainly.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a good compromise from our standpoint.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they don't always agree with our standpoint.
No, but
I think the conservation restriction would help us.
Since we don't have one meeting with all the different boards, it's a little bit easier to try to head this off in advance.
We've had enough time getting one board through a night, imagine having them all.
So I appreciate you hearing this, and I will certainly talk to him about it. Does anybody else have any comments on the...
Anybody else have any questions or comments on this? Yes?
I suspect this is some sort of hydrologic connection.
Well, the line's in one but not in another, but I would say there is a very good possibility that there is.
So that gives us more impetus to say, let's go with the 4 versus the other, and that way you're not going in that area at all, you're not disturbing the thing.
Yep. Anything else? Well, I appreciate your time, really do, and I will be back in touch with Matt about that.
All right, great.
Okay, have a great night.
You want these back?
No, you can have them.
I know it'll end up.
All right, moving forward pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended, the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a request for determination by Yolanda Quick for the removal of stumps, declaring an invasive vegetation, and the establishment of a lawn and planting at 200 New West Townsend Road. We did a walk on there today, and she has requested a continuance. At this point, it's a lot more involved after Carl and I were there than what we were kind of led to believe, so she has a lot of work to get the information on a plan to get submitted to us.
Yeah,
Then Matt's not even sure that the RDA is gonna cover it.
I don't think the RDA covered. I'm gonna talk to Mr. Proctor when she sends him up, because every time I've gone on the property, it seems like the scope of work increases a little bit each time.
Yeah, and there was no diagram, no description of the work, no buffer zones, no nothing on the application, so. I will accept the motion to continue that until October 3rd.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving forward with current business. Enforcement order 255 Sunset.
Recommend that we lift that enforcement order, seeing as he's complied. As Commissioner Luck, the chairman, and myself, I brought them out to that area. Number one, just a quick glance at 255 to show, I mean, he did what not only what we said, but the grass growing beautiful. But number two, I spotted during the course of the torrential rain, I went to areas that we had some chronic issues with, with erosion. And I discovered on the back of 24 Fire Road B, there was a severe erosion event going directly into the lake. So I'm going to be investigating that, so that area will be brought before us. But on this side, I would recommend lifting the enforcement order because he's complied.
All right. At this point, having seen it, it's definitely all vegetated in, the driveway's been moved. I mean, after that rain, there was no erosion from the property itself. Fire Road 24 has some issues, but the property itself has been perfectly stabilized, so. At this point, I will accept a motion to close out and remove the enforcement order on 255 Sunset Lane.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All right. 188 Birch.
Place is almost cleaned up.
Okay.
Totally. You're doing a nice job.
He has an order of conditions that we've given, correct? Isn't that the?
There was a long time ago we gave him an order. I think that's even.
Oh, this is the fire.
This is the guy
Okay.
with the cars.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, and continue watching that. Enforcement order, Battle 168 West.
She'll be in for the next meeting with an RDA. While the
Okay.
file is complete, she actually did a nice job with the map rendering. Just had to get it in, the paper in a timely fashion to get it advertised. She didn't bring it in early enough to get in for the October 3rd, so we're doing it for the next meeting.
All right.
This meeting, so we're doing it for the October 3rd meeting. It's all set.
Enforcement order, Power Stone and Gravel, Leominster Shirley Road.
They're, just a reminder, they're due to submit that information to us for the notice of intent for the next meeting to be on by the 17th at the latest.
Okay. And those were the dates we gave them in the enforcement order?
Those were the dates we gave them during the meeting here.
Okay. Yep. 55 Spring Street.
Steve Marsden is looking for historical photos and he's found a couple of historical ortho photos showing that there was already a patio in existence. It was a red brick patio. Photos that he's found so far are a little fuzzy, but you can definitely see there was a red brick patio there. He's looking for clearer photos, and, I'm also doing a search to see if I can find some clearer photos, but that's active. He's claiming that there was a pre-existing structure there. It was a red brick patio.
Always in use or was removed?
It was changed out with whatever material they've got on there now. They've got a paver patio now, basically.
So they're claiming that the red brick was there up until they took it with pavers?
That's correct.
Okay, and they have not yet submitted enough evidence?
Well, the ortho photos are there, but they're fuzzy, and they want to get something that's clearer.
Okay, all right, yeah, because we kind of have to see
In
if
fact,
some...
I just reviewed that with him again this morning. We've
Some
gone over the
continued
last couple
use of
weeks.
it, so, okay.
So just out of curiosity on that one, was the certificate of completion
It was already issued.
issued? So at the time of inspection, was there a red brick patio there?
Honestly, Carl, I don't remember. I remember the biggest issue was I kept getting phone calls that there were more pavement and more rocks than what we had allowed, and that turned out not to be the case. So, I was concentrating more on extra pavement, and patio thought didn't even dawn on me.
Okay, and where are we at with 155 Reservoir? You said that there's...
Letters, actually, we should be having, Whitman and Bingham has been out there doing the survey. I've gotten calls from all the people involved, confirming that they've been out doing the survey.
Yeah.
And they will be in timely for the October 3rd deadline that we gave them.
Okay. Any update on the land exchange at Gilchrist? Last I heard, it was in the Central Register, and had to be in there for 30 days.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything.
Okay. Certificate of compliance on Unitil. Do we have a date to walk out there?
We don't have anything right now. We had proposed an original date and nobody could make it, so
Okay.
we're gonna have to continue that.
All right, let's see if we can, can you send out that doodle thing? So that we can get that, if we can get out there this week and walk with Jamie, that
I
would
know
be
that's
great.
been, you guys like the polling? Is that helpful? The doodle polls?
Well, then you can't go. If you don't do the doodle, you just can't go. Nope.
It's helpful.
Which is awful. I mean, we enjoy your opinions. And we won't get the chance to hear them.
If you try for hours. Just not one.
It's helpful, but we need to close it out, because I thought the walk was on, because we sent back and said, yep, that...
Yeah, no, he sent
That was
couldn't be there at
okay.
8. He said-
No, before that.
Oh, before that, I wasn't here
There was
before that
another
one.
one before
so-
that, yeah.
All right, now we need to get that, because I definitely want to walk that site, get that closed out, so.
We have the certificate of compliance to sign for the partial.
Okay.
did get an as-built in.
This is for Novak?
Yep, for
Okay,
Novak.
yeah.
We did request the as-built, so I wanted to go over that. Anthony, I see, is here. Frank Novak sent me some photos earlier today.
Is it on the
Took a while
agenda,
for them to
man?
upload.
Yep.
Is it on the agenda?
I wrote up the thing to be signed, so I'm just giving you guys a document to be signed, because you approved a partial certificate on lot 7,
Okay,
not lot 4.
so this is just the sign off of what we approved.
Right, but you also asked for an as-built.
Yeah, we needed the as-built.
So I'm
Yeah.
giving you the as-built that you guys requested as part of the issuance of the certificate. And I asked Anthony to come in here just in case you had questions on this as-built, because it was part of the requirement to get the certificate signed off.
Right, so we're doing the house side, because it was 2 lots in the application.
Right.
So we're signing
So it's
off on
actually
the
a
house
partial
side,
certificate.
not on the other side, which they've done the work, it's just a matter of letting the vegetation come in this time.
And if I can,
You can pull a chair up.
thank you. If at all possible, for the commission to consider, maybe even at the next meeting, reviewing the slope one more time, and see if it's possible to sign off on that as well. After, I think it was before the last meeting, they had put some seeds in, and erosion control blankets, and some of the pictures that we sent over to Matt. A lot of the grass has started to grow.
Okay.
Which was great to see. And then since the last meeting, they were able to follow up again with New England Wetland. And as was explained before, they couldn't get the live stakes due to, I guess as I start to learn more about this, they're only available at the end of November and March, as when they're dormant and when you can actually cut them. But after further consultation with them, what was available was tubulings, dogwood tubulings. So again, as I'm learning a little bit more myself, so they're a little further along in the growth process than the live stakes, like a year or two already in growth. So instead of just literally like a stake jamming it in, there's a little bit of a root system to it for understand. You kind of plant that. And so they did that this past week. They planted those tubulings. And I believe our plan had called for 15 live stakes to be placed along that shoreline. And they kind of went above and beyond that and actually installed 38 tubulings to really try and make sure that we have what we need there. And then also, I believe, Mr. Luck had mentioned, inquired about the erosion control blankets, kind of not covering that whole area. So I said, let's just do it. It may not help with the seed, it helps with protection. So they really, overdid the erosion control blankets. And in some of the photos, you can kind of see the tubulings. They're kind of small. You have to zoom. I think some of them might be painted orange. In there. So like I said, the plan called for 15, they installed 38 of them. Some on the top of the bank, and what we talked about, I say just jam some into the side of that vertical face too to try and protect that.
Okay.
So they've done all that. So I guess if possible, if we can see at the next meeting, see how things go, to give the commission another opportunity, I guess give the ground an opportunity to further establish itself.
Yep.
Hopefully, it's enough that you may feel comfortable in signing off on Lot 4 as well.
Well, we can definitely do Lot 7 today. I mean, after having been out there, the site plan is
And
your
if you
usual
want,
exactness, so.
Be upfront, I think we talked before, they're looking to try and sell a property. So we're trying to get as much done as we can before October. So you don't have to sign anything tonight. It's not going to hurt us.
Okay.
If we want to wait till October 3rd, if that's okay, and see if it's satisfactory to the commission to sign up on the whole
Do you have
thing.
the order conditions set for Lot 4? We'd have to sign them separately anyway, so.
So it was one order of conditions.
Certificate, the partial that you approved is here.
Okay.
So it's one order of conditions, but there were 2 lots. And I think Commissioner Rabbit mentioned, hey, we might be able to do it in 2 separate, which is a great idea. It really was a great idea.
Okay.
And if that's what we have to do, then so be it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, where it's in front of us, and that we should just sign that one off in
Okay.
case, and this one's not ready.
Okay.
Just that way there, we've got it, we might as well sign
So
it
then-
tonight, and then we can submit.
And then we can come back October 3rd and have another
Yep, submit some more
discussion.
pictures and talk with Matt, and we can take a look
If
and
you
see
guys
if it's
want to
worth
walk
it
it,
there.
and need
or-
us to be out there, let us know. We'll be happy to meet you on site any time between now and then.
Great.
They survived these rains.
I saw it today, but across the pond, so.
Yeah, and with the rains too, from what Mr. Novak was saying, I didn't get out to that part. I was trying to do a lot of rounds during the rains, but I guess it held up really well. I think with the wall that went in, helped a lot, and all the erosion control blankets, there was no issues over there at all.
All right. Well, at this point, any questions or comments on the order of conditions for Lot 4? What's the address out here? 990? No, 380 Sunset Lane. All right, I'll accept the motion for certificate of compliance for 380 Sunset Lane, Lot 4.
You already did that last meeting.
Oh, okay, then we're all set.
Hold on, Lot 7.
Lot 7.
It was 7.
That's 7?
Yep.
Okay, super. All right, we'll get that signed off.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Anthony. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
Partial certificate, Lot 7, work on Lot 4 to continue.
Okay.
Which is what you guys motioned last meeting.
Okay, we'll just pass that around. Moving forward, we have an extension permit application for Lake Shirley. Pass that that way. Hello, Joanna, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
That's good.
How are you?
A little beaten up.
At least I don't swear.
Yeah. You know, when somebody that's on the school committee should have known better than that, so, yeah. And honestly, that's the first time we've had that happen.
Yeah.
During our live, yes. It's the first time we have not had the public able to control themselves. So, one thing I didn't see is, did you have a term
They
for your
just
extension?
give a letter, you don't apply for an extension.
No.
Okay. Do you have an idea how long you wanted to try to extend it for? I mean, typically it's 3 years, so, okay, just so we have an idea of what we're looking for.
I didn't know if you said that.
Well, I believe we can do as long or short, up to 5 years. So that was the question on that.
It wasn't listed as a 5-year order on the order.
Okay.
It was listed as a 3-year
A 3,
order.
okay.
And it was issued October 13th.
Mm-hmm.
Will be 3 years.
Okay.
Because that's when it was mailed out by certified mail.
Yep. Alrighty. So one thing I did notice in the order of conditions was for the extension, we had to have the weed survey and the updated management plan. Where are we on those guys?
Well, the dominant, that's part of the order of conditions is looking at those dates because he doesn't have any of that tally as of yet.
Okay.
The third-party survey, he's been doing the same third-party survey for 2 years. He encompassed all of Geosentech. So he has that scheduled. He usually does that towards the end of September, first week of October.
Okay.
And then that will all get included into the lake management plan with all of the updates.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's, he wanted to kind of look at those types of things and trying to get the dates better out, because even last year, if you remember, we started to have dialogue over the end-year report, and it was coming by December 1st, but then the DM, all the numbers for the DM weren't in that current plan, so we thought about pushing that out till the beginning of spring, so
Okay.
you'd be able to get the whole discharge and recharge in that end-year report.
Okay.
So I think we've got to kind of look at all of those things and when they transpire based on the summer season.
Okay, so I guess so back to the reports, the lake management plan. Is that something, so we've got the year-end report, the weeds, is that something he can do prior to the start of the drawdown? So that we have basically a year's worth of data encompassed before the end of the year, and then we're not chasing all of that review of 2018 when we're trying to deal with what we're gonna do in 2019?
I can ask him.
Okay.
I can absolutely ask him.
Okay.
I know when I spoke to him today, he had thought it would all be done for that November 30th timeframe with the end-year report.
Okay.
That he had it all submitted by November 30th.
Okay.
I can ask him if we can have those two by.
Yeah, just check and see, and
Because that's the 15th,
maybe he and,
15th.
and if you don't mind, he and Matt can communicate back and forth at this point, just because you're right, those were some of the dates we wanted to try to close up. And before we go, and we don't have to do the extension permit tonight, because the next thing that you're doing is the drawdown, and you don't start that till after November 1st, November 15th,
October.
October 15th.
October 15th.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that as the steadfast date, because people like the long weekends, if it's a nice weather, that they can still utilize their boats. So
Okay.
we set it for October 15th every year, we do the drawdown.
Okay. And the only reason I'm gonna ask this is because we're dealing with this with Hickory Hills now, and they are dead set against going before November 1st, moving forward.
Who Hickory Hills?
No, the state of Massachusetts, Department of Environmental Protection. Hickory Hills right now is going to attempt a drawdown, so there's a permit before us
Okay.
that the Department of Environmental Protection and Department of Fisheries and Wildlife commented on and are pretty much dead set against doing the drawdowns before November 1st.
Oh, really, when did that change?
Just recently, well, for us, we don't exactly
It was
know.
always a suggestion, like since 2004. Now they're making it mandatory. They changed their policies when they changed the laws. When this was approved, about a month after this was approved, they changed the laws. They updated the regulations, like in November of 2015.
Because I send them, that's part of
Right.
mine, is I have to send them a copy of.
Right, and what they did was, like Hickory Hills is going through what the change of laws has affected now. Whereas it was, we think you should just send it to Fish and Wildlife for their review. Now they won't even give you a DEP number unless you go to them first.
Because I know I send it.
Yeah.
So there are certain things like the November 1st start date, they're getting real emphatic about that. So it's kind of changing the way we're allowed to regulate it, and I think if you want to go before that date, you have to give them a real good justification as to why. It's not that it's not impossible, but they're going to be looking for a lot of information.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could add something to that?
Sure.
As a function, now understanding it, the GEIR basically.
Environmental Impact
Report, specifically looks for drawdowns in two kinds of lakes. You know, those that have been impounded and have been doing it over time, and those that are not. They allow you, and that's where we're attempting to go, is that where it's an impounded and we've done a drawdown, they do allow you some flexibility as long as you provide them with some real good reasons for it.
Well, back up, we don't know.
We don't know that.
We have no idea because this is the first new drawdown application we've had.
Yeah.
And they are definitely throwing up roadblocks. So, just so you know, as we're moving forward, the state may come in at some point and say, no, you can't do that.
And they're not even being polite about it, they're being very abrupt.
Because like I said, I know I've always sent them the copy of the plan, Fish and Wildlife,
Yep.
I send them.
Yeah. But, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Just to add something to that, because maybe they're being more strict now, and we were having a tough time, communicating with them, getting their direct feedback. But the November 1st was always there, and there was the justification. That was all done back in, I don't know, 2001 or 2 or something, because I remember having to go to here and Shirley with all that justification of why it was okay to go earlier and why it was actually necessary to go earlier, because in order to get it to the levels that were being achieved, you couldn't do it because we did November 1st for many years. I don't know how many, but we weren't able to get it down quick enough because then the damn rains came in November and December, and it really messed it up. So there was a lot of work done justifying getting from November 1st back to October
And again, we just want to
15th.
make
So
sure
maybe we just need to pull that
there
back
may
up
be a
before we
fight.
give up.
The Hickory Hills application had a tremendous amount of backup in data.
Yeah, and we did back in.
Down to Shirley.
Oh, yeah. Yep, yeah, and they justified again. So it's definitely a change in the permitting.
They were
So it's
a
not
lot
like it
more
was.
lenient on the justifications than they will be now.
Okay. So at this point, And I would ask, when he's doing a report, just make sure he's got the order of conditions and follows all of the points that we have in there, so that everything we need's in the report. It's pretty straightforward, so there's, nothing missing at that point, because
Yeah, no, we went through them, that's why I knew with the third-party survey, the lake management, is all good.
Okay, yeah, and like I said, just make sure that all of the points that are needed are in there.
What report are we talking about, the November report?
Yes. Well, whatever reports are listed in the order of conditions.
Yeah, which would be
For the
November,
extension
right.
specifically was the third-party weed survey
Right.
and the lake management plan. Those were requirements of any extension.
Right, but I would hope, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I have some concerns here. I take great exception to the statement in this thing that the Lake Shirley has been complying with the Conservation Commission order conditions since 2008. I don't know that they've ever complied fully with the order conditions. But that aside, we have a number of open action items from the last report back in April that haven't been completely fulfilled yet. So I would think that would be more important to get up to date with compliance than the report in November, which is after we would have already given an extension.
Okay.
So I think those actions, I mean, we've been waiting for an update of inclusion of some language in the lake management report for 3 years. It's still not in there. Every year we're told it'll be put in. There were a number of action items, including very specific omissions from the order conditions in the annual report from last November, which we got in April, which has still not been fulfilled. So I think we need to get up to speed with compliance with this order conditions under this permit before we entertain an extension.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we have a little time before the October 15th, target. So it's, hopefully it doesn't disrupt it. But if we don't get it caught up now and just wait, okay, do better next time, in November, we'll be out next April again with something that's not compliant. I mean, we've got to get compliant. It hasn't been compliant since 2008.
With your permission, can Matt contact Dominic with any of the concerns we feel are missing, just to make sure they're updated and added? Okay. Yeah. And then Matt can work with him on the dates, coming up with better dates, because of course, unfortunately, he's not here and he's a professional. So he would be the one to tell us, this is when we can have this is when we can have that. And then we can make sure that he's on the same page as everybody else is for getting the proper dates.
Sure.
Okay.
Because I guess I'm confused, because I thought our last meeting, I don't believe you were here, I believe Mr. Dwyer was chairing the meeting, and I walked away with the lake management plan was a new tool that we created, and that we would just keep growing, getting better. Getting better. There was numerous questions that were answered, and I thought that we were in compliance. I think I walked away.
Okay.
Just my interpretation
All right.
was that we were all set, we were in compliance, and the lake management plan is evolving. There was discussion about Ken Wagner, and I specifically said, Ken Wagner was in the plan as someone we were utilizing, but he's not a guarantee, because his report wasn't due on time, and Dr. Wagner doesn't go by time frames.
No.
You get your report, you get your report. He
Yeah,
doesn't.
which he had some very interesting conclusions too, we can talk about when Dominic's here.
Yes,
Which-
but that's how
Okay.
he works.
Yep,
So
okay.
I can tell him,
Yeah.
you want your report, he gets it to you when he gets it to you.
Yeah, and we do understand that. so,
And
all right.
when we have money, we can pay for him. And when we don't have money, we can't pay for him. So I've always said he can't be a mandate,
Yep.
because I can't guarantee funds. So those were all things I thought we talked about at that meeting.
Yeah.
I did not realize we walked away not in compliance, because I think we would have come back to being compliant.
Okay.
So I'm very concerned that we're being accused of not being compliant when.
Well, we will put the listings together, and of course, Matt will CC you at all the conversations, and then we can,
Because I just, it's the 15th of October, and so that doesn't give a lot of time to become compliant if we are that negligently.
Yep, yeah. And if the commission so chooses, they can always give you an emergency drawdown, if it comes to that, and everybody's making progress, but we're not where we need to be on the 15th. Doesn't mean if the commission doesn't feel that you should draw down, that you can't draw down. I mean, but it is a deadline, that we just need to make sure everything's in place moving forward, so. All right,
Did you think we were out of compliance?
There are points that Carl makes in terms of things that haven't been addressed that I think need to be addressed, but in my view, I think the LSIC is in good faith been working within the spirit of the lake management plan to be compliant.
Right, that's what.
But there's things that we're gonna address moving on and.
Right, that when we're growing, it's new, it's.
exactly.
We've done a lot in 3 years.
Yep.
With the plan, with the.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and we can just keep addressing it as we go forward. So, but yeah, like I say, as long as you're okay with Matt contacting Dominic,
yeah.
we're all good with that, and then we can just get the plans moving that we need for the extensions, and then go from there.
Sure.
Okay.
One thing I'd like you personally to bring up to Dominic is last year during the drawdown, we had conditions that were unusual that we hadn't seen in a few years, and that we were drawn down as far as we could go, and then we got a hard freeze. The result of that was a major fish kill on Lake Shirley, which affected a lot of the fish populations, the chain pickerel and the bass and the
Really?
perch. And
Was,
the size of the fish.
Was Fish and Wildlife notified of the fish kill? You did? Okay. Can you just forward us that info? Because honestly, this is the first I've heard of the fish kill on Lake.
Well,
Like Shirley.
their notification is you call an 800 number.
Yeah.
And they take all the information. They don't get back to you, they don't.
So you notified them of the fish kill?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
even by, when I was able to get my boat out in the lake in the spring,
Yeah.
go out and use it, there was still fish that were visibly floating all over the lake in the spring. And some of the larger bass, and I was actually talking with some of the tournament fishermen, they've really noticed that the size of the fish is decreased. And my wife and I would have a contest on the lake of who come out with the biggest fish. This year it's who can come out with the smallest fish, because the small fried bass are actually able to survive because the big predators aren't there.
Really?
Yeah. So just.
Any ideas on what caused the fish kill? Deoxygenation or?
I think there may have been some areas of the lake that were ponded out, and then a hard freeze caused those areas to actually completely freeze.
Really?
That's my thought. But that's part of the reason I want the Dominic to give his opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, and what depths we were at when that happened?
Well, and
Could have been a major oxygen change too.
the other thing is, I think that will have some impact on other lakes that we look at in town when we're considering, drawdowns and things like that, so.
Mr. Chairman, I think before we have this kind of speculation, we need some hard data, because, on fish kill or ponding or any of these things, because, regularly there are fish kills over the years, and they're mostly kivers, and they were plentiful this year, I agree. But it wasn't something that doesn't normally happen. And it may indeed be a sign that we should learn from, but I think we need to learn with hard data and not...
Oh, definitely, but...
Because we're throwing out things, of ponding and freezing.
As Todd said, we need to discuss this with the professional.
Yeah, and I hope he has some data and not just, opinions of things he's seen somewhere else. Yeah.
So I'm curious, so you call Fish and Game
I
and...
think what happened is I called Dominic, and Dominic wrote up a thing, and he actually sent it out on our website, sent it out on Facebook.
Yeah.
Because we buy 1, 2, or 3 calls, and it's usually spawning, and it's an occurrence that happens quite frequently.
Yeah.
And then we kept getting calls, and so my husband and I looked it up, and it said to call the Department of Environmental Police. So I called them, and they gave us an 800 number for the EAP, and when you called that number, they said to call the Department of State Police. So I left a message with the DEP, and I also called the state police and bid 0 to talk to a live person, to say, you're referring me to them, I'm getting an answering machine that's referring me back to you. I just know, as the president, I'm getting a lot of phone calls, and I want it noted somewhere that I've called to identify that.
Interesting. Now, is there any parameter, so you have a letter that you drew up and put on the website?
Yeah, for Dominic, yeah, Dominic did that.
If you could get that to us,
Yeah.
that would be great, just again, because this is the first I've heard of it, so.
Yeah.
And I know you're supposed to be notifying Fish and Game, and I thought there was a little more procedure than calling the state police and hitting 0. that doesn't sound very,
well, no,
very useful.
The DEP
Yep.
is what I call.
Okay.
And that's why I did that link.
Okay, yeah, super, if you could, just, like I say, first I've heard of it, so.
Yeah, that was back in, I think like March.
I was around that annual meeting, we discussed it at the annual meeting as well.
Yeah.
Either Ken or Dominic went over it
Yeah.
At the meeting because people were asking questions.
Yeah.
And I believe we posted it on Facebook, it was on the website.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was information that was available.
Yep.
We did the best we could.
Yeah, no,
with
that,
what
yeah.
we were given for that. In terms of hard data, I don't think Dominic's gonna have any hard data on the fish kill. He might
Okay.
be able to answer some general questions.
Well, maybe something we just need to it depends on if Fish and Game doesn't care, but they may have a certain criteria that they may want to have you examine moving forward if it is an issue. So
Yeah.
that's all.
And we can ask Dr. Wagner as well, if he has any weighing, if he's heard anything, if he can draw down at an impact, he might be able to weigh in on it.
Okay, super.
I can
Yeah, I
send
might-
an email to him.
It might, what it might be best for is to identify some things to look at going forward, some data that we should be getting, whether it be oxygen or pooling, or, it might alert us to some things that we have to keep an eye on.
Yep, all right, well, certainly, if you can bring that up with Dominic as well, and if you get us what you had posted on that information, and we'll go from there. All right. Any other questions at this point? So we'll work with Dominic on the dates and when we're gonna get the plans and any other loose ends that we need to tie up.
And we're back October 3rd.
At this point, we'll plan on October 3rd, depending on where Dominic's at with his stuff. So, all right?
All right.
Thank you.
All right. And just amend her, application for 3-year extension, just so we have that. Okey-doke.
Yeah, I haven't written up the form yet. I don't usually
Okay.
write those up until you guys approve it.
Okay. Moving forward, minutes to approve.
I handed out the minutes from the last meeting, and I know you guys had the minutes from the meeting before. I don't know if you guys have reviewed them or not.
I just did. All right.
Matt, can I,
What was discussed?
Yeah, you want to keep that so you can notify if we do ever meet again.
I know I'm interrupting, I apologize. Lake Shirley website, you scroll down to spawning related fish kill, there's a PDF attached right there.
Okay.
So it's easily, just in case we don't, we can forward that to Matt.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
But if anybody else wants to look at it sooner, then we can get it to you.
That'd be awesome, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, have a good night. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Yes.
just a question on the minutes.
Yep.
Is there a reason we can't get the minutes in advance?
Well, basically, the reason why I've been handing them out hard copy is there was a debate over whether or not me issuing them by email was a violation of the open meeting law. So what we had decided was that I would hand them out during the meeting, you guys would look them over in the next meeting, you would come in with handwritten edits that I would take after you guys agreed on them, and then I'd go back and change them.
Okay. I remember I wasn't at a meeting, I was either watching or listening to tape when that was mentioned. And I'm very sure, but we can confirm with council, there is nothing wrong with sending out the minutes ahead of time. What we can't do is we can't give you modifications and have you send the modifications out. So it would be, we really should get them sent out
If
when
you
you
guys
have
want to go
them.
back to it in advance, that's fine, but that's what I was directed to do.
By who?
By the commission.
By us when we were talking about it.
Oh, it's certainly not an open meeting law violation.
A squeaky issue, but if it's not, it's not.
Yeah,
Okay.
as long as we don't, what is a violation is if we send something back to Matt, like I used to, I'd send some markups back, Matt would incorporate them or not and send them out to everybody, that's a violation, I now know. Because
Yeah, which
it's a
kinda
way of me
stunk.
giving everybody my
It was a
opinion.
good system.
Yeah, it was.
You know what I mean? We were good at making sure those things were accurate.
Yeah, it's just now we've swung, it's the fear has swung us
If
to
you can get them out
the
to us,
other end
Matt,
of the
then before
spectrum.
the next meeting.
Yeah, I can,
All right.
that's not a problem. I mean, I've just been doing it this way because that's the way you guys wanted me to.
All right, and the only other thing too, just make sure that they all have the documents listed, okay?
The only time I list them is when you guys approve them.
Okay. I think you have to document them anytime we take them.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to be, totally in compliance, so.
Yeah, I also got a couple of dates I gotta correct on there too.
Okay.
So Matt, could I request that you email the prior one and this one back out to us? Because I don't have the hard copy.
I can do that, sure.
Okay,
No problem.
so we'll hold off on these?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because I'm not gonna vote on the 15th, I wasn't here anyway, so.
Yeah, and I haven't read it, so.
Okay. So we'll move forward from there.
Personally, I wish we could go back to the old system. It worked. Let's
All
face it,
right,
we
action
tag teamed on that
items.
pretty good, Carl.
Yeah, I thought it was good, but.
It was all Nat Boying's fault.
Darren? Yes, sir. 300 Holman Street. How are we doing today, Darren? Yep, pull it on up. So, we have some complaints about, stage being built over the Mulpus Brook and pathways going down to it and activities in the protected zones.
Right, I spoke to Matt.
Okay.
by phone,
Yep.
And he mentioned two things. I didn't know about trails, so.
Well, I'm extrapolating, if you have a concert over the brook, you have to have people coming in to view the concert, to set up the concert, I mean, you have activity all in amongst the brook in that, protected, sensitive zone.
I mean, the organization that you had doing that event had a Facebook post showing them setting a stage in the Mulpus Brook, which I have stills of. And they're not supposed to do that without coming to conservation for approval.
Right. Sorry.
I mean, that's just the long and the short of it.
No, sorry. I would have come.
I mean, they didn't put any fill in, it was a temporary setup that they took out, but still it was in the brook.
Sure, I would have come before. Sorry. Live and learn.
Mm-hmm.
Won't do that again.
Yep, yeah, honestly, after, the forethought you've put into your other gatherings there, it seemed like you were very concerned with the wetlands and protecting the forests, and honestly, it was a little shocking to see what was going on down there, so it's definitely not something that we would condone.
Right.
Even on a temporary scale.
Right.
I mean, you can have it at 200 feet and enjoy the brook, but to take the time to carry all that material down, to have a party, to have all the people trampling through there, I mean, you've got sensitive ferns, you've got lady slippers, you've got all sorts of, fairly delicate plant life in there, as well as turtles, and so.
On review, I would have invited you. I've seen many of you there.
You always invite your neighbors.
I would have invited you. I did invite others, though, they didn't come, at least at the times of my invitation.
Okay.
So yes, I would have invited you before, I would have asked, I would have followed whatever advice you would have told me.
Yep.
Follow whatever advice you told me forward.
Yep.
Absolutely, I'm looking to be in perpetuity conservative. That's my goal.
Okay.
And I'm looking for various vehicles to do that.
Okay.
Conservation vehicles, and discuss some of those with some of you.
Okay.
So that's the plan. Not looking to erode the place, destroy the place.
Okay.
And looking to make it open.
Yep.
To more than
Mr. Chairman?
the old.
Yes, Mr. Luck.
Because I'm not familiar with the incidents at all, but based on what we've seen, or Matt saw what we've seen, what should have happened? What should the process have been?
Well, it certainly should have at least started with a conversation of activities within the riverfront.
Okay.
And, one person or two people walking through the woods, basically don't leave any trail, don't leave any signs that they were there. I'm not sure how many people were there, but it sounded like there was probably 50 to 100 people there.
Yeah, so.
I mean, there was a crowd.
Yeah. So
There's a
should we-
crowd, so they physically set up a stage over the brook.
Okay.
And had a concert around the stage over the brook in
So
close
what should have been
proximity.
filed, an RDA, or what, how
least
should
Well,
how should you have done it
something
correctly?
should have been filed. Personally, I would have had a really hard time approving a party of that nature
over Mulpus Brook, with the amount of people that were there, the duration, you know, all those
But
people.
again, not to interrupt you, but aside of whether you would have agreed with it or not, what should have the owner done to bring it to our attention? Some filing or a letter, or I'm trying to put myself in his position, saying, what should I have done? Even if I get told no, what process should I
I
have
don't think we have a formal process, but I think the beginnings of a conversation, a letter saying, I am looking to have an activity in the woods, in the wetland, over a brook.
Okay.
This is my idea.
Okay, so just informal notification?
Correct, yep. Some sort of formal notification of what we're looking to do. I don't know if it would necessarily, I mean, again, that activity would probably at least warrant some permitting, some
Yeah, it kind of sounded
formal.
if you're putting stuff in them, or want to put stuff.
Yeah, like I say, we don't have any formal way of permitting it. There again,
Well, I would have sent an email.
Yep.
Or, yeah, anything like or such or near.
No, I mean, I don't.
And you'll get emails from me.
Yep.
More than likely now.
Okay. Yeah, definitely anything in that area, you should at least be informing us and asking for some sort of response. You know, see what activities are there, see what we can do to mitigate any damage that could be done. I mean, I know it's temporary, but...
It's temporary. There were people like the trails, but on the other side, you're aware of the other trail that now many more than 50 people walk frequently.
Yep.
And I didn't think that that's an issue at all.
Yeah.
When I didn't go through that. I just gave my...
Well, again, walking over an existing trail as opposed to constructing a venue over the brook, and again, with all of the people around it, and, you know, it's just not, it's not an activity that would be, I don't think would be permitted, but we weren't given the opportunity to weigh in on it, so.
I understand the difference. But
Yep.
Absolutely. An email, sure.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. So at this
And
point...
I believe there was also, I don't know if it was you, or I also offered to approach the Board of Health for a porta potty. I put a porta potty up. And
Yeah, that's not, the porta potty would be, I mean, other than it's sitting in the middle of the road, so it's not in the wetland.
Matt mentioned it, so.
Yep. Yeah, I know there was pictures of it, and other than that, that's not a, where it's on the road surface, so basically where the bridge is gone.
Oh, okay, over there.
Where we have the handicap parking on one side, Darren has a porta potty on the other, so. Which unfortunately to use it, you gotta traipse down through the brook to go back up and use it, but, so, but again, we don't have any regulations on porta potties on town road. So that would be the Board of Health or DPW.
I did ask the police, and they said it's fine.
Yeah. Yep, yeah, no, it's not, it's that concentration of activity in that sensitive area that we're concerned about. So, if you're gonna do something like that, have that activity in the brook area at all, should definitely come forth and show us what you're looking to do, and then we can help you mitigate any damages from there.
Okay.
All right.
There's also obviously other areas that have wetlands, and so chances are I'll send you an email.
Yeah,
For other
again...
locations as well.
Yep. Yeah, if you are doing it, it's best to be safe than sorry, so.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the commission? I don't know, did you get to send out all the pictures that you had, just so everybody?
No, I had a hard time getting them to load.
Okay.
Don't know why.
All right, just for a follow-up, so everybody knows, so.
Mr.
All right,
Chairman,
yes.
I'd like to say, Darren, thank you so much for all the things you are doing to help the conservation effort. I really do appreciate that.
We're in this together.
Here we are.
I noticed nobody complained about your cutting plan.
Could we change the topic? Okay, we change it. Are we done? Okay, next topic. Not in this year, not in 2018. They certainly complained yeah, and it did go through various foresters. Gary was the initial one that was hired by the lane attorneys. And subsequent, it's been 3 harvesters, all with people having different opinions, including myself having different opinions. And
Like
so
you said, there-
can't please everyone.
Yeah,
all the time.
there is some artistry in there and some,
Right.
personal opinion, so.
Um,
All right.
Yeah, maybe that might be an email to follow up because it's still in forestry. I intend to maintain it in forestry. And there's an active cutting plan on some of the acres. And
You have an active cutting plan now?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not actively being harvested right now, but the plan's in place.
Okay.
The most recent harvester he was out in Northfield, and I asked to just make sure the stones get put back. He was out in Northfield, he started on a little 5-acre piece near abutting the town land, and he had received another job, and so finances for them.
Yep.
Ditched me and took the more lucrative job. And then the seasons changed, and then we went into summer, and so it sits up. So that's the status of that.
So you're still in the process, huh?
So I'm in the process, and it is interesting that I didn't send an email this time because I didn't think it was an issue. Though I typically do, I'm more inclined to say more than others.
Yep.
And so I get a lot of feedback.
Yes.
So there's been a fair amount of feedback, and so when I do have the next harvester, I imagine there will be difference of opinion and feedback.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't come before us, so we only see it as a courtesy.
Well, sure, I'll do that.
Well, I meant the forester only gives it to us as a courtesy.
Right. There was a suggestion that I switch from state to you guys, and I don't quite understand why.
For
a cutting plan?
Yeah, we don't have any jurisdiction over it because forest cutting has its own Mass General Law, its own Department of Enforcement and Regulation.
Right.
And we have no authority over that. All of that activity is exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act, so.
There are a few trees behind, well, I could speak specifics to you on other property. There were two old pre-existing houses going down the south side of Holman. On the left, a house with a bomb shelter and double fence wall, and then a more recent house. Those two behind that, there's a row of pines that the previous cutter left. However, the Houghtons have requested that I cut that row of pines because I don't want it to land on their fence. I called the state forester. He verbally didn't object, but same thing. I don't want to be cutting trees, and invariably someone calls me up and says, "You shouldn't have done that."
Yeah, if that's under your forest cutting plan, that would go through the forester.
Right. It's not specific for those trees, but it's a 33% partial clearing. So they left those, but then I'm going back for a second to take those down.
Yep.
So it's vague.
And as long as you've cleared it through the forester.
Right.
That's, again, unfortunately, not unfortunately, we just don't have any jurisdiction. Of course, you're not exempt from cutting in the wetlands. You still have to stay out of the wetlands under the forest cutting laws, but.
Just to go back to the public marketing piece, my grand plan, one of them, in purchasing the land and knowing that, so that I could afford it, I did agree for the lanes to keep timber rights. That's how the whole cutting process began. So I got a lower mortgage, and they got obviously the timber rights, and that's where Gary came in. Initially.
Okay.
So it's just one of those mechanisms. The money wasn't going to me. I owned the land, I had some say, but I didn't have complete say.
Yep.
So it was an interesting mechanism. I don't know if I'd recommend that process to other people, but I have some experience in that. So I have that experience to share with other potential landowners or current landowners. Also, my thought was I approached UMass forestry programming and State Forester and others, and I thought, North County Land Trust, and I thought, well, let's use this, and it's the Keystone training program out of Harvard Forest. And they all said, oh, we'll do that, and you could use your property. Well, I said, I don't use my property as a demo project, so other landowners can see the benefits. and everyone working well together, at least most people working well together. So the initial plan, and it still is, it's just, obviously, once one comes down to the nitty-gritty, it gets a little bit more messy in reality. This plan still is to have it be a example, good example, an example to encourage other landowners, present and future, to show that it's a viable option than development. So that was kind of how that whole business deal came about and where I still am today.
All right.
So that's one. Could I mention one more thing?
Sure.
Again, separate but obviously always related. What we talked about, I did send it to Ken, the demo project, again, I tried to do the demo project of the Tenderness Trail going into the Peabody. So people are using it now, it's great. I think it's great. So the idea to then, I approached, and I thought just to share who I'm chatting with as regards connecting the Neshoba Rail Trail to the Midstate Trail, 45 miles. Have a horizontal connector. And so the primary person I'm working with is Al Fetterman from National River, and he says, sure, I'm good with maps, I'll make you maps, I've got experience. So you can make me maps. Brandon Kibbe approached, he said, well, I don't want to speak for him, but I received encouragement. Who else I recommended to speak with? Paul Janigi, thank you. Recreational Trails Program. So people who've just been put in my consciousness. Charlie Tracy, the National Park Service Rivers, Trails and Conservation Assistance Program. Obviously Karen Chapman and Sherry Bean, you guys work with. And obviously North County Land Trust. And you guys. So obviously I floated the idea past Al, and that came about because Marion came up to me and said, I like what you're doing, and I said, I always admired what you did. And she said, well, see what you can do with Al. And so that's how the conversation began. So once I got a sense that it's viable from Al, coming to you guys, and so my request is, if there's someone on the committee who's willing as a volunteer or in an official capacity to join me and Al in looking at the map, and then we could outreach the Snowmobile Club, and we could outreach various folks to see what would be a good map, obviously topographically, obviously riverways, obviously where the crossings are on major roads, have that map, and as well as obviously look to see how many landowners are there on that trail that we have to then approach and say, are you open for an easement? Are you open for a national waterways grant? What are you open for?
Okay. How far have you gotten, have you targeted areas of where you're proposing to put a trail?
Right. So Al has looked at the map. He says about half of it is already in conservation. Fantastic. That's only 22 miles then. It's fantastic.
Can you forward us what his map is so far of what he has? That would be a great place to start.
Right, so he's only done a little sketch. But it's just rough. It's just a big highlighter. So it doesn't isolate parcels.
At least it gives us an idea what tier, where it's going through in Lunenburg, what tier it is.
Right. The only thing is I thought, well, along the Mulpus is easy because I have some of it and you have some of it. We've got to get around the lake, the top of the lake. And then it's somewhat easy through Groton and Ayr. And then going that way, it's easier to go through Ashby. Though some Fitchburg folks want to drop it down a little bit through Fitchburg, at least the western side of Fitchburg.
So Groton and Ayr, so you're going through Shirley?
Right.
Okay.
And a lot of that's conservation.
Yeah, if you can get us what you have on it, then we can try to work with you. And Bob Pease is our Trails Committee.
So maybe
So we might want to just address him at the next meeting and see if it's something has time and can sit, where he's already trying to figure the trail system out, so.
Maybe how about if I write an email addressed to you, maybe.
Send it to Matt, and then Matt can forward it.
Him, and then
Okay. Just unfortunately, he's not here tonight, but that's already in his wheelhouse.
Right.
It might be something, because he's working on trying to get the connection between the small town and lane property.
Yep.
And the small town forest and the Cook Farm property that we have on the east side of the property.
Fantastic.
So, and
Exactly.
working with Hickory Hills, trying to get trail easements and permissions.
Right.
So he's already working on that
He's
through the
ahead of the
northern
game.
tier, so.
Right, great.
So I don't think he would be anywhere near opposed to helping out with that, so. All right.
Fantastic. Again, just caution that the maps that I'll send, the one is very draft.
Oh, understood, yeah.
Right,
Like I say-
sometimes people are waiting for the
Yeah.
finished result.
Yep. Yeah, no, we understand that what point you're at in the process right now, so.
Starts with a vision.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, Darren, well, thank you for coming in and addressing that, and in the future, make sure to let us know what's going on. All right, have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, agent report, legal updates and requests.
Nothing at the moment.
183 Hemlock.
Still going. Haven't had a chance to get out there and get pictures for you guys. I'll have something next month.
101 Pleasant, do you have the enforcement order?
Yep, and I just got an email from Adam Costa. He's been given permission by the owner's attorney to talk directly to the owner.
Okay.
So he's calling the owner tomorrow.
And do we have a date on this?
Yeah, I had them come to come in for October 3rd.
Okay. All right, so it's an enforcement order for the new owners of 101 Pleasant. They have not put the bond in place yet, as according to the order of conditions. Their forestry permit has expired, so they should be working on their remediation. So, at this point, I'll accept a motion to issue an enforcement order on Pleasant EPW LLC. We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All right, send this around for signing. So what's the scoop at 1842 Rear Chase Road?
I haven't heard anything on it.
That's only been going on for a year and a half.
Bob's been keeping actually up to date on that one.
Okay. Can you maybe poke Adam and see if we can get an update on this? And email it out to us? The poor gentleman has been waiting. Open space and trail use, we have not met. We're meeting on the 25th. One thing we were looking at, for everybody that has an Android phone, there's an app called All Trails. And if anybody wants to start walking trails here and there in the different properties, you can record your track. And that track can be exported. And Brandon and I think it was Sarah Kamer, is another member of the Open Space, can take that and put that onto other maps, maybe even a GIS, to get a database of town trails. So anybody interested?
Joined
Open Space, she did, yes.
Did she?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, and she's definitely a wealth of knowledge in the
yeah.
GIS as well as, I mean, Brandon forgets more every day than all of it know.
Yeah, you know what we call a scammer, right?
I don't want to know.
Yeah, no, it's your email address.
Yes, you're right, it is.
It is, yeah.
That's like cluck.
Yeah, yeah.
And pluck.
And pluck.
All right, so we are meeting on the 25th, 26th, I think. No, 25th, a Tuesday, yep.
No.
It's a Wednesday? So that would be the 26th.
26th.
Okay. LSIC and Hickory Hills Land Management updates. So Hickory Hills is continued. We met with Lake Shirley.
Right.
And Carl, if you can produce the list one more time.
Yes.
We'll get it to Matt, and Matt can work directly with Dominic so we can get all of these loose ends tied up.
Thank you.
And then figure out the dates on the year-end report. And I don't know if anybody has any options or opinions on that to share with Matt, where you guys had talked about a little bit at the August 15th meeting.
Well, maybe changing the date, I'm not sure.
Yeah, changing the date of the reports, or adding a firm date of the report submittal.
Yeah, I think that's one of the several things in the lake management plan that we should discuss, but, you know, it doesn't have to hold up the process, but it should happen, because we should relook at that, because the timing isn't convenient for anyone, like, you know, the LSIC or nature, for Christ's sake. And there's, you know, some other things that really should be revisited in the report at this, you know, at this time, in the plan. You know, because there's stuff that is never going to get done, you know. I mean, it was put in there for whatever reason to make us happy, but it isn't really going to get done. So I think we're kidding ourselves. So I think we really...
You mean information that's in the plan?
There's stuff in the plan. You know, if you remember, one of the things that we wanted put in the plan back in June, 3 years ago, was, you know, some actions to try to work towards a deeper drawdown. So they put in all of this stuff, none of which is being done. And even at the time, I said, you know, I don't know why you do it. You know, why do you need a new bathysphere, you know, bathymetric or whatever. So there's stuff in there that was kind of just put in for some reason, but not to be done. So we should get that out and have that plan be something that's implementable, you know, and that there is some commitment to actually doing it, not just, you know, when we have money, we'll do it, you know.
All right, well, anybody else that has comments on it, if we get them to Matt, then we can talk about them on the 3rd, and have them, and that way there, if we can prepare Dominic for the questions, he can have some answers for us, so. 155 Reservoir, they're coming in on the 17th. They're supposed to have their information submitted for the 3rd, you said?
Yep.
Okay. Butterfly Lane, you were sending those letters out?
Letters are out.
Okay. Shady Point?
The trees.
No, this is for erosion, right?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to finish up with him yet because of all the other issues I've been working on.
Okay, miscellaneous?
I have Matt Fournier here, for 70 Oak Ridge. He and I have been discussing implementing the planting. So you obtained a list of the plants that you wanted to use.
Yes. Thank you guys for taking a couple minutes here.
And I'm actually gonna recuse myself because Matt's mother's been working with one of my staff members on the plant materials, so.
Well, while you're recusing, would you mind signing the determination?
Not at all.
These are the copies of the determination for Cullinane and for Dave King.
He wasn't gonna let you off that easy. What's that? He wasn't gonna let you off that easy.
Should we start signing?
Cullinane, the tree removal, Dave King, the king of tiki huts.
Once again, thanks guys for taking a couple minutes tonight, and it's been a busy night. Based off of the last, one of the last meetings here, we had the 2 kind of planting schemes we put together. Went over the rear planting within the work zone.
Matt, can you pull the microphone over?
Oh, yeah. Sure can. So we went through, Andrew Leonard kind of prepared a rough layout. He originally put together the planting schemes, 2 planting schemes that would work well in that back area for plants that would, you know, that would fill in the area nicely, that would work well with colors and work well with the existing conditions and what the environment would want in that area. From there, I did have him put together a quick draft of a plan that we could kind of base off of, that he could kind of take and say, all right, well, if you use this palette here, you know, we could do 2 different schemes, right? So we'd have scheme 1, scheme 2. That way I could give my mother-in-law some choices so she wasn't completely overwhelmed, and had some sort of guidance along the way for colors and selections and making sure that they flowed well together. So Andrew did that. My mother-in-law, Trish White, had gone down to Lakeview and worked with Rick, and they went over this planting scheme and took that and kind of just, they didn't change and modify too much, but what they did was sort of modified some of the colors and some of the, and they had a couple different swaps in and out, which were kind of like kind in quality as far as the types of plants and how they grow, and you know whether they are high bush blueberries or low bush and things like that, right? So they went around. And what I did was I took the plan that they had, I made some printouts here, and just sort of labeled the areas here as far as, you know, what types of plants in which areas, and kind of wanted to go over that with you guys here tonight, because ideally we'd like to get going on getting the plantings done in the next few months here, or the next few weeks really, if possible, to get that backyard in good condition now that we're getting into the later months. As you can see, and I don't know if anybody's looked at the property in the back at all, we've done a great job as far as maintaining the erosion on the backside. We actually let a lot of the weeds just kind of grow in over the summer, because of time and being busy, but also it was helpful to maintain that soil in the back area over there and have no erosion kind of going into the water.
Just for clarification, because us lake people get all confused of what the backside and the front side is.
I would call the backside the hill going towards the water side.
The water side.
Yeah, because we're not really concerned on the back, on the front side, which would be the house number side, being the front. But I do appreciate the back as more of the front when you're living on the lake. So unfortunately, I don't have a larger plan, but I did want to kind of just go over this with you guys here, if you have a few minutes, and ideally get your blessing on it. One of the things that...
Before you go on?
Yeah.
Last meeting, you guys asked me to check on the date of the expiration of this order. It's
Yeah.
October of 2019.
Oh, you're right.
October 5th, actually.
Okay.
Same date as 101 Pleasant Street is due to expire, because they were both issued on the same day.
Ah, okay.
Thank you, John.
So what I don't have an answer for you on is, and this was something we talked about before in the big concern about, full coverage versus, what's full coverage, right? And how does that work and how does that grow in? So, do you overplant now and have themselves kill each other off, or do you plant to grow into the spaces? And I would say, forward thinking would be to plant so the plants can grow properly and healthy versus overplanting, and then you can see what happens from then. And gonna go back to the public conversation earlier about overgrowth and proper planting and things like that. So exact quantities, as far as how this would lay out, we have assumptions on exact quantities, because as we would get into the planting, that would be something that if we're saying we're gonna specify 10 plants at this time, and really we should only have 8, then we adjust it from there, and I think that that's something that, without going crazy and doing complete scaled out drawings at this point,
So,
would be another
I guess my
conversation.
question to you is, if you have a general plan and a general philosophy of how you want to plan.
Yeah.
And then
which is what we have.
Matt comes out and takes a look and says, hey, you may think you need a little here or there, you guys are open to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly,
That seems
that's
like a reasonable approach.
that was the approach, and I believe how the condition was written when we had reviewed it. But I just wanted to be open with that, because the way we had originally talked about maybe doing like the serpentine to the stairs, between cost, time, and just the trickiness of the site to make it work, they ended up just going with that straight shot, get it down, and that also tied into codes and the wall location, all that other stuff. So once again, since this plan's been drawn, we have listed here, whatever number 7 was off the top of my head, but, we're looking at doing the sumac along the bottom of the wall. Andrew had originally specified 15 here. Realistically, we might be into 18, you know what I mean? But that's open for that part of the conversation. So I wanted to make sure you guys understood my approach on the dialogue on that end of it, and the fact that we would keep Matt and everybody in the loop.
My opinion, it seems like that's pretty reasonable for a lot of know.
And same things, even plans are plans, and you get into these types of things, but there is some existing plant life that's on that hillside now, and the intent is not to disturb it. So what Andrew drew here on a couple of these items, it might not make sense. So he has 5. He's got 2 different types of sumac that we specified out. So we have 2 different types, and I'm assuming the 2 different types are 2 different foliage colors or something like that, right? So they wanted to mix those in. So he has 2 drawn here and 3 here. Now, once we get into it, the 3 that are listed here might not work well in that space. So I think it's sort of a working together approach to how we handle it, and then going over, just making sure you guys are okay with that approach before we start getting into it, because I want to get this order going, and we're going to be working on the front steps. Actually, we started working on them this week, so once they're done that, it's going to be paving, getting the binder coat down for the driveway, and letting that settle for the first year or so, and then getting into this planting as soon as we can.
The only other comment I'll offer is, while you had an initial plan that everyone looked at and thought looked pretty good, if you come back and everything you plant is substantially less than what was proposed, I think
Yeah, no.
people are gonna have a problem. But if you're around the same amount and some vary here or there based on densities and stuff like that, I don't think people will have a problem.
And I think they're okay with the approach as well.
Yeah, I agree. I don't remember the details.
So there's one, yeah, so there is trees. So on the order form, there is one, so we have the oaks listed here, I believe. Yeah, we have the oaks. What wasn't on the order form yet was the red maple. And I have it noted on here, you know what I mean? So I have number 10 being the red maple, because they should want to have the color back there. So you have the red maple up here.
Did you plant them yet?
Yeah, they're already done.
Okay.
Just don't tell anybody. No, they're not done yet.
I hope they look like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope it's got a higher trunk to it though. But and then 13 was the oaks, right? So I wrote here 13, they're showing 3 oaks, you know, but stairs and existing conditions, you know, as we get into the plantings, we're looking at the size and how they grow. You know, obviously you have your landscape size on the average, you know, we gotta take that stuff into account and put in place properly. But the planting scheme makes sense. You know, it's aligned with the palette that we had originally. I took the palette, working with Andrew to provide Trish 2 different options. She took that, worked with Rick down at Lakeview, and they just made a couple little swaps here and there. But they're all the correct species and types and different colors and things like that. So I think if you guys are okay with that approach, I think I'd like to get moving on it. And then I'll keep Matt in the loop, and assuming that we can make it in short order, we could just walk it after and make sure everybody's good. So.
I just had difficulty seeing it. I apologize for.
Oh, no worries. So basically, just took the existing palette we had, put the numbers on the page, listed some quantities, and we're just gonna make modifications as needed, because existing site conditions are what they are, and, you know, make it look nice. A lot of low bush blueberries are happening, a lot of sumac and low ground coverage, so, that was it.
You
You know?
have different kinds of blueberry bushes, right?
There's plenty of them.
Yeah.
More than I knew.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now.
Apparently, if you want blueberries, you gotta have different kinds.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise you don't get blueberries. Yeah, they have to be different species of those.
Okay. So if you guys are good with that, I can try to, you know, I could always forward this information on to Matt as well. And then just keep everybody in the loop if the board agrees that that would be the way to go.
His comment is correct, you know, Matt comes down and looks at what actually gets in the ground. And
Yeah, I think what he's proposing was appropriate. But I mean, the order called for you guys to review it before he did.
That's fine.
Oh, the sign.
So as long as everybody's okay with that approach, I think the review is what it is, and we didn't change the, like I said, the palette didn't go off palette.
Nice
you know?
work.
So.
The whole place is looking nice.
It's looking nice. Love my mother-in-law, want the project done.
All right, have a great night, Matt.
This is on TV.
Yeah, love my mother-in-law.
Are you saying that because it's on TV?
Favorite mother-in-law.
Your favorite mother-in-law?
Yes.
You only have one? You have more than one?
It's the only one. Thank God. It's the only one I would ever want.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, good
You got that one too.
Good comeback. All right, so we do have a couple other quick issues here.
One other thing I did want to make a note of before we leave though, is I did talk to Matt about the erosion concern that we have along the stairs going down the hill.
Yeah.
And I think that next time we do a site visit over the plantings, Matt, we could just kind of go over that. Just to avoid potential washout down that steep slope, because that interconnection point where the stairs meet the wall is a tough little spot. And going down the stairs, I don't want to have the amount of granite that's out there now. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on how to make sure that's maintained and what materials are we going to use to do that over time. Or is it going to just be plants, and is that going to be the answer? And I don't know that would, because I think the washout would still get the roots out, which is going to keep killing them. But that's my unprofessional opinion on how to handle that right now, so.
Take a look at it when we come
We'll
out.
deal with it as it comes and just kind of leave it as an open-ended issue. And I don't know that they're gonna get into that wall along the water edge this year.
No, I think it's cast.
But we're gonna see how it goes, so.
I was gonna bring the wall up because it has to be done this winter.
Right.
According to your order of conditions, it was
It's October.
non-extendable, and it's October 19 is when your order of conditions is up.
Right.
So you really need to get into there this winter and get that, because once the water's up, you won't be able to get out there and do it, so. I did want to just make sure you're aware of
I
that.
know we talked about trying to do it, and it's just finances and trying to figure out if you can make it happen, but
Okay.
as long as, hopefully try to get it done, and at least, I know we want to get it started, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, yeah, because that was part of the conditions for the remediation from everything else that happened on
So I
site, so.
can address that if we think it's gonna be an issue, or, if we have to look at that, we could always go back and have a conversation, I guess. and see
Yeah,
if there's any
definitely want to
options.
do that sooner rather than later.
Okay.
You don't want to come in August or September
No, not really.
next year and say, hey,
Yeah,
my
I
wall's
think we're
not
gonna know
done.
fairly soon, and
Okay.
maybe just the magnitude of the landscaping on that site has been
Mhm.
something of an undertaking.
All right, Matt.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. 20 minutes. All right, one quick thing, the planning board is approving the Settlers Solar and had commented in their public meeting about maintenance of the meadow, and they were wondering how often to cut the meadow. So I just wanted to voice our opinion, which my opinion would be cut the meadow as little as possible, because that provides habitat for birds and small rodents, and, I mean, just because there's a fence there doesn't mean there's not life in there that depends on the meadow grass. And I think if you just cut it, now you've taken away the 30 acres of trees, plus you've taken away any other habitats that's there, and you're not gonna have any diversity in the area, so.
The only
I
question
was,
you have is fire.
what's that?
If it's a fire or sort of meadow, wasn't that a concern with regard to what are we doing for fire? They were concerned if they had a fire, how was it gonna get shut off?
I didn't hear the meadow being part of that, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I agree with
they
you.
had all their concerns, but one of them that bothered me was the cutting of the meadow.
Yeah.
Which, and we also have the butterfly habitats that we're making them put in, so. I mean, any cutting or maintenance should be at a very, very small, or a minimum amount.
So
We
they're
should be
trying-
allowing it to grow fallow.
Yeah, they're trying to keep the saplings down though, right?
Well, they have to go through periodically to keep the meadow so that you don't, but they've taken the stumps out.
Oh.
When, on a lot of that. I believe, aren't they taking the stumps in the solar field itself?
Yes.
Yeah, so the stumps are coming out in the solar field. Outside the solar field, they're leaving the stumps, which I did ask Gary, because there was comments about cutting the stumps at 4 feet, 2 feet, and all different heights, and he said, no, you cut them at 6 inches. You don't want growth off of an old stump this high.
Okay.
You want it just all from, all basal growth, so. I just wanted to make sure everybody was on board with the recommendations for the meadow cutting and the stumps.
How do you phrase that? How do you, I understand the goal, but how do you define what's allowed?
We would recommend any stump cutting to be 6 inches above.
No, I mean the meadow cutting.
The brush hog?
Maintenance of the meadow grass, cutting of the meadow grass should be at a minimum to allow for it to grow to full extent, flower, seed, reproduce, to provide habitat for plants and animals in that area. 'Cause like I said, because they're talking about 6 inches, 12 inches, cutting it monthly, and you just, any other biodiversity that you were trying to get back in that area is just gone at that point, so. They do have to go through periodically and cut it, but not a monthly cut or maintaining it at 6 inches, so.
When they go through periodically, how much would they cut it? Do you still leave it a certain amount, or they just go in and cut it at an inch?
Given the topography, you have to go in with a brush hog anyway, so I mean, you're cutting it from 6 to 10 inches probably. They're just looking to go through. The biggest thing, like Jack says, you're making sure that those saplings are out and that it's not hiding the bottom of the panels.
Sounds like the cleaning crew's here.
Oh, so, and just wanted to make sure that I wasn't speaking out of turn if I issued that tomorrow to Adam. So, yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. So I will make that comment. And that was the only thing I had. I am starting to go through and update the cloud a bit, working with Matt on a new filing format. So that there'll be the meeting docs will be agendas, minutes, audio recording, any miscellaneous stuff. Then there will be a file for notice of intent, which will have a separate folder for every notice of intent, which will lead off with a DEP number. Then RDA will lead off with the date of the RDA application. So everything will be sequential. And then in the folders, everything will be DEP number, date. So again, everything that's accepted in is in sequential order. Then as we go through, like Hickory Hills, it has subsequent hearings, all that new information all goes into one folder, as opposed to going into a folder each meeting. It's a pain to have to go back, oh, we looked at that, but we looked at that 3 meetings ago, and having to go back and find it, so. If you get a chance to just take a look at it, I'll be working on that over the next few weeks and months.
Outside of the meetings, you're gonna have the RDAs and the NOI separately?
Yes.
And you just, for the meeting files, would you just have shortcuts to those documents?
Well, the agendas, I'm gonna have Matt reference either either DEP number or the RDA number. It will also have the address, the applicant's name, and the date. So all of that information will be in the name of the folder, so it's just a matter of highlighting the folder and you get everything that you need in it. So I have a little bit of it, I don't know if you wanna take a quick look. So, NOI applications. So they are set aside, DEP number 1129, Mass Ave. And if you highlight it, it's gonna tell you.
And they're all
Signature Living.
sequential.
Yep, so then they'll all be in order, newest to oldest, depending on how you sort it.
Yep.
So the one we did tonight, Bixby, was the most recent one, was a DEP number 1140, 217 Reservoir Road, Mitchell Bixby, the date the application came in, and their information.
Okay.
Then it just makes it easier to go back and just do a search on the address, do a search on the DEP number, and then all the documents in one
That's usually how
spot.
I find stuff anywhere, is just do a search.
Just do a search.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you come up with like 6 different folders and 15 different copies of the same plan, and so I am, and I'll work with Matt, he's not here tomorrow, so I'll work with him next week. I've got the format typed out, so we can start following it moving forward, just to make it a little easier to find everything.
Cool.
So, just keep an eye on that as we go. I also started Google Photos, which I'll put the link in here, so anytime we take photos, we can just put it in the photos section, and then they're there in posterity. And a YouTube page. So if we take videos, yep, because I had gone and flown my drone over small town. So there's a couple videos and a bunch of pictures last time I was out there, so.
Great, thank you for doing that.
Regardless of what I think people say. And at that point, any other questions or comments from commissioners? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Motion and a second, all those in favor? Aye. Have a good night.
Good night. Yeah,
Good night.
Thanks for working on that documentation stuff.
Yes, it was time, and I'm gonna have a little bit of time.
all the doors? Okay, thank you.
Are we off the air? Okay.